In a desolate lot, a guy tried yanking off his collar, praying it wouldn't blow. When he realized it hadn't gone off, he finally took a breath. He smashed the device and admitted that kid from before was totally right. Seeing the collar was a dud, he crushed it, shouting that the kid was right all along. His hair bleached white as he celebrated finally being free from that leash. He could feel pure power surging through his veins. He knew then he wasn't like the rest of those worthless, weak superhumans. He flexed his new ability, screaming that he now possessed the power of a god. But before he could unleash it, someone dropped in from above. A guy dived down and hurled a containment trap, snagging him instantly. While pinned, he demanded to know how the squad got there so fast, yelling at them to let him go right now. But the guy refused, explaining this was exactly what happens when you ditch the collar. He called him a threat, but the man just screamed about foolish mortals and promised they would regret this. Then a gunshot rang out. Later, the guy reported he caught the superhuman with the broken collar. When asked if he followed protocol, he was lost, thinking a tranquilizer was enough. His boss chewed him out, telling him to read the handbook. So he started flipping through pages looking for the rules. He found the pages stuck together. After peeling them apart, he was stunned by just how many steps there were. Looking at all those instructions, he complained that the layout was awful and hard to read. But he was snapped at to quit whining and check the explosive type. But he was told to stop complaining and check the explosives, only to ask if glowing eyes were weird. He mentioned they were getting brighter and asked what that even meant. Asking if glowing eyes were weird, he said they were getting brighter. The captain ordered everyone back and simply wished him luck. Hearing that, he panicked, asking in total horror what the captain meant by that. The explosion swallowed him whole, leaving the entire area buried in smoking rubble. The guy eventually opened his eyes and realized he survived. He couldn't believe how much his super strength protected him, but then his stomach growled. This was Wade, just another superhuman in a powered-up era. 60 years ago, a massive disaster hit a Donghai city. Back then, train passengers were just sitting there totally unaware. Two girls spotted a report about strange lights on the horizon. Right on the horizon, one girl turned and saw it was actually real. The other girl stared at the sky, thinking it was beautiful. It looked amazing, but her friend screamed her name when she saw her hair turning snow white. At the same time, a nearby man started coughing and suddenly began breathing out blue flames. The train was suddenly filled with screams before it exploded. A girl named Lana survived and started crying, but she was shocked when she opened her eyes and found herself floating. She looked down at the wreckage, wondering if she was actually flying. Once she realized it was real, she started testing her new flight powers, excitedly soaring into the clouds. But later, the city was covered in bodies. Police even found several disfigured corpses. The flash gave her flight, but she climbed too high. They later learned it was a light burst. After that, white-haired superhumans with red eyes started bringing pure ruin everywhere. Some fired energy rays while others torched buildings. Meanwhile, mind readers ended it all together. These horrors rose up, and superpowers became a curse. More superhumans appeared and disasters got worse, forcing everyone to flee. Because of this, the superhumans could only watch. They wondered why they deserved this as their powers spiraled. Soon, the tension between humans and supers turned into wars. Eventually, everything collapsed into chaos because the superhumans refused to back down. Humanity hunted them down, but their own flaws eventually led to a crushing defeat. Both sides fell into despair and eventually forged a new order. After the defeat, both sides gave up and created a new order. Over at the cleanup crew dormitory. At the dorms, the building collapsed into rubble just before a massive explosion hit. Suddenly, a hand emerged from the debris. It was 5 hours earlier, and Wade was happy to find his favorite cup of noodles. Since his powers were dangerous at age 6, Wade spent 15 years working as a cleaner. He worked hard every day, dedicating his entire life to serving other people. As time went on, he actually started enjoying the work. After finishing the last cart, the captain said having him around was convenient. While resting later, he remembered how superpowers were hated and tied to dangerous jobs. He kept resting with that thought, waving goodbye as the captain left early. Still, he couldn't stop thinking about how those collars decided their life and death. Suddenly, a woman appeared with kids, introducing him as a superhuman. He watched her tell the children to give him what they had prepared. Since he was a superhuman, the kids all started talking at once, telling him how hard he had worked for them. Everyone spoke at once, saying he had worked hard. While she explained superhumans atone through labor and must never be treated poorly. But after they gave their gifts, she left with the kids, reminding them to sanitize. Wade was stuffed, but he couldn't help shouting that he had finally hit the jackpot. Suddenly, he heard someone shouting about an order, and turned his head to look. Right then, he saw a delivery man suddenly fly right past him, which caused all his food to scatter across the dirty ground. As the man flew past, his food scattered, and a passerby even ended up trampling it. Nevertheless, he casually reached into his coat, pulled out a plastic bag, and started gathering the packaged food once again. After picking up the food, he left, waving the bag high and claiming it was the absolute best. After finishing with the packaged food, he left, waving the bag high and claiming it was the best. He kept singing to himself along the way until he finally reached the dormitory. There he saw his colleague Anton and asked him to guess what he had found. In response, Anton held up his own food packet, and Wade saw he had some, too. So he cheerfully said they were both lucky, and Anton casually agreed with a nod. He saw Anton had food too, so they cheered about being lucky. After saying goodbye, Anton went inside, repeating how lucky they were. He dropped his gear and slumped down, thinking how people only fed them expired scraps. He clutched his collar and cried, thinking naive guys like Wade were the lucky ones. Meanwhile, Wade happily opened his cabinet and excitedly pulled out his chicken cup noodles. He even hugged the package, thinking he would never taste a real citizen's food. After that, he read the instructions, which require 3 minutes in hot water. So he got busy boiling some water for himself. As Wade sang about his cup noodles, Anton accidentally doused himself with boiling water. Suddenly, he made a fork float and was instantly detected. He stared at it, envying Wade's life of false happiness. He knew Wade's illusion would soon shatter. He moved the fork again and was immediately warned. He was notified that the termination protocol was approved and was now active. His eyes widened as his collar tightened, and the walls soon began to crumble. Wade looked around in total confusion, but then a basin hit his face and the entire building exploded. A basin hit his face as the entire building exploded. At that moment, Anton sensed the space and the raw energy inside him. But his own thoughts were cut short. He sensed the energy within, but his thoughts were cut off as his room collapsed around him. He looked up as everything suddenly crumbled into pieces. He began coughing up blood, feeling a sudden surge of power from within. As everything crumbled, he coughed up blood and felt power surging from it, wondering if it was his collar-free ability. Suddenly, the floor shattered, and he grabbed an overhead chair. He thought this power meant disaster, but he rushed out, using debris as stepping stones. After escaping, he saw the entire dormitory was now ruins. While he struggled to catch his breath, someone approached and asked if it felt good to release his power. The man praised his mental control, saying that surviving it meant he had officially passed. Hearing this, Anton demanded to know who he was and what test he was talking about. Anton wanted to know who he was and what test he meant. He replied that the missing collar should ease him, claiming he had disabled it. After he disabled it, Anton pulled some metal close and demanded why he removed it if it meant dying. In response, the man asked him if he truly wished to take his own life. Anton was stunned when he was asked if he felt any different without the collar on. When questioned about wanting to know, he finally released the hovering metal. He asked if he felt different without the collar. When Anton released the hovering metal, the man laughed, saying he liked him because he was smart. He then grabbed him, promising that he would fix the flaws in his power. But he caught him glancing back and asked if he was looking at someone he knew. He would fix the flaws in his power, but he caught him glancing back at someone he knew. He observed how quickly Anton recovered and noticed his care for others. So he pushed him away and urged him to step back. He observed Anton's recovery and care for others, so he pushed him and urged him to step back. Following that, he bit down hard on his thumb. The bite was so intense that his thumb was torn off. After that, he bit his thumb so hard that it was torn right off. He then spat the finger into his other hand and walked forward. He approached the crushed dormitory and threw his severed thumb toward it. After spitting it into his hand, he approached the crushed dormitory and threw his thumb toward it. The severed finger began to dissolve and glow brightly in the air. As the severed thumb glowed and dissolved in the air, he told Anton to move. Anton was still reeling from the finger, but he said it was nothing and he would adjust. Still, he kept glancing back until he saw the dormitory explode. At the same time, the man told him to ditch the past, claiming he was a god of the new world. Anton sounded panicked while calling Wade's name. Fire swallowed the ruins and even scorched Wade's noodles before a hand snatched them. Rescue teams arrived soon and pulled Wade out from the rubble. They could not believe he was still breathing, especially when they saw that specific scar on him. They rushed him back, scared any chance for answers would die with him. Later, at the Superpower Bureau, the captain got word that the survivor had finally woken up. She mentioned he was in the interrogation room and ready to face some questions. Hearing he was ready for questioning, the captain gave a quick nod of approval. He promised to go after finishing his page. She saw the comics and told him to hurry, but he corrected her it was Manhwa. Back in the interrogation room, a woman watched Wade closely. She saw him devouring his food and told him to slow down. He did not listen to her at all, so she warned him he was going to choke. When he kept ignoring her, she just sat back and observed him. She ignored the attitude and kept watching, noticing his scar looked exactly like the one Nisha has. Oddly, his energy and thermal readings were totally normal, unlike Nisha's stats. He was a match for Nisha, yet his energy levels were standard. Looking at him, she figured he was just a harmless, ordinary kid. She briefly thought about dissecting him. She assumed he was harmless and briefly considered a dissection. But her eyes widened when she realized he had not slowed down his eating one bit. She wondered if those instant noodles were actually that delicious. While she was lost in thought, someone appeared right behind her unnoticed. She did not notice the figure appearing behind her. When the captain remarked that the noodles were delicious, it gave her a massive fright. He mentioned that workers like Wade usually love that stuff. But she reminded him that these people all have unique powers. He told her to stop overthinking and asked if Wade was the one who made it out. After staring him down, he confirmed the boy did not have a scratch on him. He realized Wade's abilities were weird, noting no normal stomach could possibly swell up that much. He checked the data and asked Tara if the testing equipment was actually working right. She admitted she could not really guarantee the results either. They had run the test dozens of times, but the numbers kept changing. The captain was shocked that Wade's bone density hit 38 grams per square centimeter. That density is insane compared to the usual 1.2, and she nodded her head in agreement. Shifting gears, he asked Wade how much he actually knew about where he came from. Wade just gave him a blank stare and asked what origin actually meant. It reminded him that laborers were only ever taught basic hygiene. He explained it meant his childhood, but Wade just repeated the word, looking confused. He wondered if laborers were just raised like cattle, but Tara noted that knowledge was dangerous. She noted city jobs are easier now, although she felt clearly torn about it. Knowledge was always considered a dangerous thing for them. He decided to take it slow and read that Wade was registered 19 years ago. On November 19, 19 years ago. Tara flinched the second she heard that date. Tara had a strong reaction to that timeline. After all, that was exactly when he first took Nisha in. The captain grabbed Wade, claiming he knew the next step. They needed to measure his actual power levels. He told Tara to come with them, and she followed right behind him. In the training room, he told her to kill the systems, even if higher-ups asked questions. Right then, the system gave a prompt to restore all monitoring and controls. They ignored the alert, and he ordered Wade to step onto the machine. Once Wade was set, he figured the kid might have physical buffs like those monsters outside. The brass could not find out, so he told her to blast him with a full energy unit. She was shocked because a full blast was way too dangerous. But he argued Wade already handled 50 bowls of food without an issue. She reached into her lab coat and pulled out a special bar for Wade to eat. After those 50 bowls, she reached into her coat and pulled out a supplement bar. Wade snatched it and shoved it straight into his mouth. He snatched it and shoved it in his mouth, wrapper and all. She stared, surprised he was just eating the packaging. Meanwhile, Wade mumbled it tasted somewhat magical. But moments later, his face turned bright red and he screamed, "It's hot." Smoke even puffed out his nose from the heat. But he soon felt a rush of power filling his whole body. The captain just snorted, watching him. Then he clicked a remote to see if Wade could handle what came next. Wade suddenly stood on a machine. A huge pillar shot out from the wall right at him. The captain ordered him to block it with all his strength. Wade nervously asked how that was even possible. Unexpectedly, he shattered it with one punch. The impact echoed, and the captain mumbled, "Stronger than I thought." Wade, though, was thrilled. "Is this what being full feels like?" he asked excitedly. Staring at the wreckage, he yelled, "I have endless power." As the debris floated around him, he was amazed. But then his stomach shrank, and he dropped to the ground. His strength gone, he passed out. The captain called Tara, who figured he wanted repairs. "Nope," he said. He gestured around, asking if any human could withstand that. She said no. So they looked at Wade, now lying unconscious and super thin. The captain suggested Wade might be what they've been looking for, possibly the Bureau's Superman. Hearing this, she asked if they should report him. But he wondered if she wanted Wade to suffer like they had. He joked about selling Wade to a researcher, and Tara kicked him for the stupid comment. He commented her skills improved. Despite her doctor role, Wade's eyelids fluttered. Even though his vision was blurry, he heard them planning to keep him on their team. After that, he suddenly woke up, startled. He saw the captain, who remarked, "You're finally awake." Brushing that aside, he welcomed Wade to the Defense Bureau. But Wade just looked confused, which clearly annoyed the captain. Just then, Wade declared he was a cleaner, picking up trash on Main Street. So the captain asked if a cleaner's wages could even pay for all these repairs. Hearing this, Wade asked what payment meant. Tara quietly explained that slaves like him didn't know anything about money. So the captain asked if he wanted to investigate the accident and get revenge. But Wade had no idea what revenge meant either. Tara said he'd only know his job, making the captain grumble about overbearing administrators. Still, she suggested they use something familiar to Wade. So, she clapped her hands as a signal. Then she presented Wade with a table full of cup noodles. Days later, he got a uniform and joined special class too. The captain said the clothes were temporary and loose, but noticed Wade had grown taller. Tara explained his metabolism spiked, his body leaping years in growth. She said it was because of his abilities and malnutrition, but he still needed observation. However, the captain's attention had drifted elsewhere. As she explained she'd handle Wade's meals, she questioned his strange stare. He gestured at her now smaller figure and said, "You have a gift for Wade." But the captain's focus was already drifting elsewhere. She offered to cook for Wade, but wondered about his intense staring. Pointing at her tiny frame, he said she had a special gift for Wade. She covered up fast and snapped that her powers were off limits. He just shrugged and said everyone in Branch 3 already knew. She kicked him, yelling that he had a huge mouth. Suddenly, a chill hit her foot. He realized he totally forgot to warn her about it. He told her to stay back because his hormones were acting up and getting unstable again. He held up his hand, explaining that cold zones could just pop up anywhere. After hearing about the cold zones, she totally scolded him for skipping out on his regular medical checkups. Realizing she was being way too easy on him, she ordered him to follow her for a physical. He said he had to meet Wade outside, but she stood her ground as his doctor. He insisted on meeting Wade outside the city walls, so she pulled rank as his doctor. As he walked off complaining about the mission, she told Wade to find Nisha or Luke. She told Wade to find Nisha or Luke because the captain couldn't be trusted, which made the captain ask what she meant. Right as she was leaving, she spotted the bag she almost left behind. She unzipped it and told Wade she had a special gift for him. She handed him a high-energy bar but warned him not to eat it without her permission. He nodded, but she wasn't done talking yet. After he agreed not to eat it, she gave him a very stern warning never to ask where it came from. When she asked if he got it, he said yes, feeling a sudden spark of real fear. Later, over in the standby room, Nisha was busy trying to cool herself off. Nisha was cooling off when Wade showed up looking for her. He explained Tara took the captain, so someone else had to lead him outside. Once she heard the news, the ice in her hand melted from pure annoyance. Her anger melted the ice in her hand. Later, outside the vice captain's office, they saw a sign saying nobody was in. Wade figured it was empty, but Nisha had already hit the buzzer. After burning right through the lock, she shoved the door open in a hurry. But the room was totally empty, just like Wade had suspected. Still, she pointed out there was some compressed gas hidden inside the chair. Wade's suspicions were right, but she noticed the gas in the chair. Her eyes glowed as she pointed a finger and let her power loose. With a quick blast, she easily torched the chair with fire. When there was still no response, she finally confirmed that nobody was actually there. She told Wade to keep up, while he practiced hiding his doubts for once. But right under the desk, her target was sweating after a very close call. Later, Nisha went with Wade. She asked why the captain wanted him outside, and he said it was for combat. She asked if he was sure he heard that right. He said yes, which made her think he would probably end up regretting it. She figured it didn't really matter as long as he stayed alive. As they walked, Wade asked what she meant by combat. She told him it was nothing, and he would find out soon. He would learn soon enough. At gate 102, she told the guards that special class 2 was heading out. She ordered them to open up, but the guards started checking the logs. The guards said it was impossible because that white ape was acting restless. Plus, they noted there was a temporary ban on opening any of the outer gates today. With the gates staying locked because of that ban, she could only give a long sigh and tell them to bring out the dog hole for her. She sighed and asked for the dog hole. Hearing that, the guards realized it was Captain Dean who was planning to head out. As they left, a guard mentioned the dog hole was unstable from collar faults. He said superhumans on both sides were getting reckless, which confused Wade. The guard explained that people inside want out while outsiders want in. A bad smell made him look at a door where way too many people had died. He mentioned rumors that the outside is a paradise, and he wanted everyone to see the truth. He walked to the door and started forcing it open. While hitting it, he said that if the callers didn't suppress their emotions, they would have broken free long ago. But before long, he was too exhausted to keep pushing. He asked Wade for some help, and Wade agreed right away. The guard said he would give a count, but before he could even start, Wade pushed the door and it came loose. The guard tumbled to the ground, asking if that crazy strength was his special ability. Wade said yes, but Nisha told him to keep moving while they still could. As they left, she told the guard to mind his business, and he nodded. She told him to keep moving. As they left, she warned the guard against prying. He agreed, but once they turned away, he secretly pulled something out from behind his back. Inside, Nisha struggled with the stuck door until Wade stepped in. He gave it a nudge and it flew open, but a giant, monstrous hand was waiting on the other side. It snatched him up instantly, leaving Nisha screaming his name in total panic. But the beast already had him. She cursed, realizing it was that mutation, the cancerous white ape. Even worse, it was fused with the flesh of other powerful ability users. It was the mutated ape, fused with tissue from other gifted humans. Wade muttered that the thing was too strong. Then he saw its skin crawling toward him and wondered what was happening. Nisha saw the danger and yelled for him to stay still. He wondered what it was as Nisha screamed for him to freeze. She instantly let her powers loose, engulfing the giant ape in a massive wall of fire. Her fire made the beast explode, finally dropping him. He asked what was going on, but she just snapped that there was absolutely no time to explain. Right now. She paged the captain for backup, but Tara said he was resting and asked how bad it was. Right as Nisha said she wasn't sure, the ape behind her started twitching again. She felt it and spun around immediately. The ape moved again, so she spun around fast. But suddenly, the surrounding monsters went completely quiet. They just stopped in their tracks. Looking closer, she saw they were all pinned down by heavy iron rods. The creatures went silent, pinned to the ground by iron rods. Not far away, two mysterious figures stood watching the whole scene unfold from the shadows. From a distance, two figures watched the scene. Seeing the monsters fall, the woman told the man he had no right to do that, even as the new saint. But she got hit by a rod mid-sentence. Meanwhile, Anton looked shocked to see Wade standing there. Wade was getting tossed from side to side. Even trapped between those massive fists, he still managed to yell out that he was doing fine. He kept shouting he was okay while Nisha fought back, reporting to the team that someone had already sealed the monsters away. After taking out the ape behind her, she warned that the noise was attracting more white apes. She also reported her temperature was critical and becoming unsustainable. She urged Tara to find a solution, and fast. But Tara replied that Dean wouldn't wake up and Luke was nowhere to be found. Sending in regular members would just lead to endless casualties. Hearing that, she stopped waiting and decided to take them all out herself. She started to levitate as her powers spiraled out of control and her eyes turned pure white. Tara warned her not to be reckless since her cooling system was failing. Tara warned her not to be reckless with her cooling system, but she grit her teeth and said it was better than being ripped apart. But she also warned that if she lost control, the new guy might not survive. It was better than dying, though losing control meant the rookie might not make it. Over at Wade's mansion, Tara told her to give him the energy bar. Tara told her to let him eat the energy bar. Nisha snapped that they should have done it sooner, but warned him to only take one bite. But the comms link cut out as Nisha's heat spiked, putting her at severe risk of dehydration. Feeling dehydrated, she tossed it aside, deciding not to worry about whatever instructions from Tara she might have missed. She called out to Wade, and he turned instantly. She admitted she didn't know why he was picked, but he might have some hidden power. As she adjusted her tie, she told him that Tara actually gave him permission to eat that energy bar. She declared that the real fight was finally starting. Wade's face lit up knowing he could eat during combat. He lunged forward, shouting about how much he loved a real battle. Without even thinking, he grabbed every single one and stuffed them into his mouth. He didn't even bother chewing, he just swallowed them all down whole. Watching his carefree attitude, she joked that his recklessness was basically a superpower. But she made it clear he couldn't handle those white apes alone while drawing her weapon. He couldn't fight them alone. She drew her gear and explained that the Deus Ex Machina Luke provided would be used way earlier than expected. As she powered it up, she silently hoped that it wouldn't fail her now. She activated it, praying it would work. But suddenly, she froze in her tracks when she realized something was definitely not right. She froze as she noticed the change. The apes in front of her had all collapsed, and Wade stood tall right in the middle of them. She shouted his name, but froze as he ripped into the corpses. His hair had grown long and wild, and when he looked up, his mouth was dripping with blood. Suddenly, his jaw unhinged like some prehistoric beast. Stunned, she demanded to know what kind of monster he had become, but he just stared her down before charging ahead with a terrifying, open-mouthed snarl. but he lost his footing on the slick grass and slammed face first into the dirt. Still, he scrambled back up instantly, realizing he was out of control. Face first into the dirt, yet he scrambled back up. Realizing she couldn't match his raw power, she decided she had to shut him down first, so she grabbed her combat tool while Wade, on the other hand, was a mess. Chose to take him down. She reached for her gear, but Wade was struggling just to stand. He tried to lunge again, but slipped on the mud once more. She just watched him awkwardly, wondering what was happening, when a hover pod zipped up behind her. While she tried to process the chaos, a hover pod drifted behind her. The pilot told her it was totally normal and asked if Wade was the new recruit. She saw it was Luke and noted that his timing was actually decent. He said Tara warned him people might die, also noticing her gear hadn't even been activated yet. That's when he figured out he had arrived way too early. She put the gadget away, assuming his arrival meant he brought a real solution. A fix, hopefully. She looked at Wade and asked why he called this situation normal. Luke explained that Wade was like an animal, letting survival instincts take over under pressure. He added that her radiation made her look like prey. Wade's power surged to reach her, but the soft earth gave way under his weight. As the ground collapsed, Luke mentioned Wade would strike soon, making her snap and ask why he was still talking. Right as he spoke, Wade climbed from the pit and landed right by Nisha. Seeing his awkward movement, Luke mocked his lack of control and his refusal to slow down. He was closing the gap fast, so Nisha yelled for Luke to move since her power was drained. He just raised his fingers calmly and told her not to panic. Since her powers were maxed out, he calmly raised his fingers, telling her not to freak out. As Wade charged, a swarm of drones suddenly intercepted him. They blocked his path and forced him back as Luke told her to stay out of it. She joked about his busy drones and he hopped off the pod, admitting that without his tech, his actual abilities weren't anything special at all. He ordered the drones to surround Wade while the guy frantically tried to chase them down. Luke kept him distracted and told Nisha to be totally honest with him. He figured that energy bar caused this, and Wade just had to burn it off. He still sighed, knowing these new drones would cost a fortune to fix later. Fix them up. Just then, the captain arrived, reminding them he said to wait. He hated being woken up early because he almost never gets to sleep. Woken up abruptly, which he hated since rest is rare. He then ordered Luke to restrain Wade. He noted Wade could handle the power from the bar and 3 tubes. He decided on 2 instead, loading the bar with open arms. He joked that Wade wouldn't die from a little extra energy boost. On the other side, Wade kept brawling with the drone swarm. With a sudden burst of pure strength, he managed to knock a few of them out of the sky. One drone froze solid as Dean noted Wade couldn't hear, but he'd explain anyway. The drone shattered while he explained that ice was only one power, and his energy could literally delete matter. Luke, delete matter. Luke heard the speech and commented that the guy was rambling again. They watched as he bragged about absorbing kinetic energy and radiation with his own body. He could absorb energy and radiation, so he raised his arm, telling Wade to let him help calm things down. Chill out. A wave of force was sucked from Wade as the energy vanished, causing his body to freeze. The captain yanked his arm back as soon as it hit, but a warning flashed that his energy was overflowing and he had to stop. He was stunned to see they had both hit their absolute limits. He had to quit. He was shocked they both hit their limits already. Wondering where Wade's power came from, he watched him start to thaw. Seconds later, a massive surge of energy exploded from Wade. Seeing him prep for another charge, the captain called to Luke and Nisha for backup as Wade bolted forward again. Wade bolted ahead. Nisha immediately screamed for Luke to use the dry powder. The hover pod pulled up and blasted him with the powder. Nisha took the opening and set him on fire with her power. Then she pulled out her device and got ready to trigger the thing. As she did, her clothes started disappearing. She looked down at herself, totally shocked. She realized her energy was still flowing and totally intact. Looking at herself in shock, she realized her energy was still there. Moments later, her body glowed with a blinding light, and her whole appearance began to transform. She announced she had morphed into armor, leaving the captain totally speechless at the sight of her. But he immediately yelled that he wanted one too, his mind racing. He rushed to Luke, asking if this was some high-tech gear he had just finished developing. He begged Luke for one, but Luke said it was just a prototype. He even offered himself up, but replication was impossible. While the battle raged behind them, he dropped to his knees to beg, yet Luke refused him again. Suddenly the fight caught up, and Nisha ordered them to help. She revealed Luke's device turned her wild energy into armor. It let her wield 3,000-degree fire, but only for a moment. Luke explained it was just a prototype. It blocked heat, but stayed unsafe without more power. Nisha faced Wade, claiming Tara could fix her arm if she used it for energy. But striking him again, she realized something was wrong. Because even with the direct hit, the blow did not hurt him at all. So she immediately asked Dean what their next move should be. As Wade kept transforming into a literal monster, Dean told her to stay cool and use the armor to burn him from the inside. She hesitated, asking if he really meant to burn him. Before she could, Luke told them to freeze. He summoned his drones, admitting he had totally misjudged the entire situation. Drones hovered before Wade's eyes as Luke explained he first suspected thermal vision. Now, it seemed his optic nerves had been strengthened to some crazy new levels. It was more than just thermal vision. His nerves were supercharged, and Luke realized Wade's brain had fundamentally changed, leading to massive neural instability. He added that while memory stayed, his perception had shifted. A normal mind paired with superhuman senses would end up distorting reality itself. The world became unrecognizable to him. Luke emphasized that in these conditions, even a sane person could snap. He believed sensory overload caused the madness in Wade and the ape. As he explained how hormones acted as a catalyst, Dean cut in, demanding a solution. So he called his drones back and told them he had one. He sent them swarming toward Wade, who followed them like butterflies. Dean asked if that was it. Luke said no, pulling out another device. He explained it was a correction mask for the ape that failed due to mental ruin. After some tweaks, he had planned to test it on new recruits instead. But Dean told him to stop. He planned to test it on recruits, but Dean cut him off. He demanded to know if the ape's secret casualties came from these experiments. Luke ignored him, ordering silence, but Dean yelled that he had been punished for exactly that. However, he froze when he noticed Wade looming right behind him. He was yelled at, but stopped when he saw Wade looming behind him. As Wade lunged forward with a heavy punch, he reacted. He quickly reloaded his arm and blocked the incoming attack. He reloaded his arm and blocked the punch. Sensing the energy within his fist, he drained it dry. After draining it, he unleashed his full power in a massive counterattack. Wade let out a scream as his arm froze solid and shattered from the impact. But Wade's shattered arm began to regenerate. They yelled for Luke to hurry because his recovery was happening way too fast. Luke moved immediately and ordered Nisha to hold him in place. She warned him to fix it fast, because she was seriously running out of energy. She then unleashed continuous bursts of intense heat to keep Wade restrained. Luke took this chance to rush forward with his new device, and he successfully attached the mask. The moment it was secured. Once the mask was secured, Wade finally regained his senses. He looked around in total confusion, questioning what he had just done. Seeing his monstrous reflection, he wondered why he had such bizarre and strange memories. He asked himself if all of that had truly been him. Suddenly, he noticed his arm was still regenerating. Seeing his arm regenerate and flashes of himself attacking Dean, he realized it wasn't a mistake. He stared at his hand, recalling everything clearly. The image of his shattered arm resurfaced in his mind. But now, he watched it mend itself and finally accepted that it was really him. His body returned to normal, and he collapsed, wondering if he was a monster. As that thought stuck, 1,000 faces flashed before his eyes. They blurred together into a swirling haze. Inside the mess, he saw someone falling, and as he squinted to see who it was, that familiar body turned around, revealing a face like a total monster. That hideous face jolted him awake, heart pounding in pure terror. Back at the dorm on day 5 since the ape showed up, Wade just lay there in total silence on his bed. Dean saw him snap awake, realizing nightmares had been trashing his sleep since they got back. He told him to take a walk and chill out since powers work better when you are calm. He didn't expect Wade to be so depressed. Luke explained that suppressing powers really messes with your head. He also mentioned that honestly, it is a miracle Wade has not completely lost his mind yet. Hearing that, Dean asked how they could finally catch the ape, then told him to take a guess. After thinking for a second, Dean turned around to give Wade a shout. He wanted to bring him along, but realized the guy was already gone. Down at the housing for former ability users. Later, at the complex for failed ability users, Wade wandered around aimlessly. He saw a guy begging to work using his wind powers, but the boss shut him down. The supervisor walked off, cursing his luck as people crowded him. Wade watched an old man follow the boss, pleading for work just to get a meal. The old man begged for a job and food, even though his wind power could barely move trash. He kept explaining he was just starving and ready to put in the work. But he finally collapsed, whispering that he was dying of hunger. Starving and ready to work, the man eventually just fell over, mumbling about his empty stomach. Wade could only look away and keep walking forward. A bit later, he made it to Shang City, where crowds of people were out shopping. People noticed him and looked totally disgusted, even though he was part of the defense staff. His face went cold as he heard them blaming his kind for trashing the entire city. Because of that, he started wondering how he had missed all this until now. He scanned the area for others like him, then spotted a slave kid sitting on the ground. He looked at people like him and saw a slave child on the pavement. He watched as the kid got yelled at for trying to grab food off the floor. He clenched his fist, seeing that people with powers were actually suffering the most. Meanwhile, the kid kept eating food that had been stepped on. A man saw it and kicked him for trying to hide it. Wade saw the whole thing, and his eyes flashed with pure, white-hot rage. Wade watched the man keep stomping on the kid while the onlookers just smiled. He finally stepped out, and the guy looked up at him in total confusion as Wade approached. He grabbed him instantly. The man barked, asking what the hell he was doing. Wade just squeezed harder. The man threatened to destroy him, screaming that he should never ever dare to lay a single finger on a noble like him. He refused to let go, so the guy started screaming that he was being attacked. Right as he called for someone to kill Wade, his entire body was crushed flat. Right as he yelled for an execution, his body was crushed. Wade just laughed at the mess as his powers started spiraling out of control. In that second, he wiped out everyone nearby. His face twisted into something totally monstrous. The kid in front of him shook with terror as he walked closer. His face looked like a nightmare, and the kid trembled as he got closer. Then, the child whispered that he was a monster. Being called a monster shattered his world. Suddenly, he saw a spider lily blooming in the darkness. He snapped awake and found himself back in bed. Confused, he sat up and saw Dean, immediately asking what had happened. Dean told him he passed out in the middle of the city while in uniform. He asked Wade if he knew how bad that looked. Wade checked himself and asked if he had hurt anyone. Dean just asked if he had hit his head. He pointed to the boy who brought him back and told Wade to say thank you. He explained the kid could expand silicon to move stuff and said he planned to recruit him. He said the kid uses silicon to shift objects and he was recruiting him. While telling the boy to eat slowly, he swore to help more kids in need. He told Wade to rest for 2 more days, admitting he was not sure if recruiting him was the right move. After that, he led the kid out to finish up the registration process. Left alone, Wade felt calm, convinced that the whole thing was just a nightmare. But Luke suddenly showed up and told him to follow. Outside, he held onto Luke's hoverpod and asked if they should tell their bosses. Luke said they were sneaking out, so no permission was needed. Wade asked where they were going, but Luke said it would make sense when they got there. While crossing an abandoned area, Luke said he had a question. He asked if Wade really understood superpowers, and Wade said Dean called it turning matter into energy. Luke said that was a basic take, since these powers were not natural at all. After landing, he said evolution is slow, but powers let people build anything. Basically, humanity was evolving into literal gods. Heading inside, he mentioned Wade probably didn't even know what a god was. Inside, he figured Wade didn't understand the concept of a god. He shared how ancient folks saw lightning as divine and worshipped it as a deity. To them, it meant something totally extraordinary that demanded absolute reverence and respect. He gestured for Wade to follow him inside while flipping on the lights. It was something that demanded respect. He waved him inside and hit the lights. As the room brightened, he promised he was going to explain every single detail right now. Wade stared at the pods while Luke joked about a superhuman cleaning 20 whole streets. He listened as Luke mentioned that back then, a worker would have been a hero. Bro, he added that the leader only reads those old books for comfort. While Wade touched a pod, Luke remembered meeting Dean and being hyped for his power. He was stoked about meeting Dean and his new power, but he ended up as a laborer, feeling totally bitter about it. After hearing that, Wade asked if he and the white ape were just objects. Bitterly, Wade asked if he and the white ape were just objects. Luke didn't even blink before answering that yes, they definitely were. He made it clear that every single superhuman was identical. He answered instantly that they were. He stressed that all superhumans are the same. Nature just works through random mutations and survival of the most adaptable. But he noted humans broke evolution because working together helped everyone survive. Cooperation let everyone survive. Over time, selfish power trashed nature. And these new superpowers threw all of humanity way off course. As he spoke, a glowing eye popped up near the vent shaft. Something small suddenly jumped out at Wade, scaring the life out of him. But Luke told him it was totally harmless and just really clingy. As the little guy nuzzled him, Wade asked what it was. Luke said it's a cat. It's a cat, a species wiped out by radiation after the catastrophe. Wade got that, but then asked where this one came from. Luke said he had cloned it, which just made Wade even more confused. When Wade asked, Luke explained he had cloned the creature. As Wade's confusion grew, Luke clarified that he used cells from the white ape itself. Hearing about the white ape cells terrified Wade. He was stunned that a cute little creature like that could come from such a monster. Luke noted superhumans might have godlike power, but that ape actually embodied the form. It came from the ape. Luke noted superhumans have power, but the ape is the true form. It can shift into anything, but it collapses without knowledge to guide it. Then he looked at Wade and told him he was actually different. But Wade wondered if he was special. Working in sanitation, he never really had to think. Now, weird thoughts were flooding his brain and blurring his sense of reality. He never had to think. But now weird thoughts blurred reality. That morning, the captain said he fainted, even though his memory told a different story. He had transformed into that white ape and taken out countless people. All those people. He had even seen stuff he never encountered before now. So now, he was terrified of his power and just wanted it gone. But Luke snatched him up immediately for talking total nonsense. Luke grabbed him for talking nonsense and slammed him down. He said they wouldn't remove the power, they'd make it grow. He explained superhumans only survive thanks to color inhibitors, which use human genes and need constant upkeep. Finally, Wade started to get it. He revealed humans lost their survival edge, and the city existed just for utopias. But he mentioned nature was wild, human genes were flawed, yet somehow complete. Wade heard him call superhumans incomplete evolution, claiming their whole system had major gaps. He added that after so many failures, the administration became overprotective of humans. If this kept up, superhumans might end up as basic tools for humans. Because of that, he had been doing secret experiments for years. He even revealed that the armor Nisha used was actually one of his own creations. Nisha's armor was his invention. He explained the white ape proved humans could finally reach a perfect body after years and years of intense study. Its body was the core method, a specific principle that bound him and all those outsiders together in their search for the perfect form. But now, he claimed he found a way better option and pointed right at Wade. Forget the outsiders. He found a way better choice and pointed at Wade. He snapped his fingers and asked for a hand, but Wade was totally lost and asked what he meant. Then, suddenly, he asked for help, but Wade was confused. Suddenly, a containment field locked around him, trapping him inside as his arms were sliced off. The capsule trapped him tight while his arms were severed. It was a brutal, instant move that left him reeling. Terrified, he started screaming for Luke, asking about his hands. Luke said he moved before Wade's powers could react. Now, it's finally time to get to work. He fired up the machines, knowing he had to finish before Wade went berserk. Right then, the casket started shaking like crazy. Luke rushed because there was so much to do, but he also hoped for more. He hoped Wade would realize this was for him and all superhumans. There was so much work to do, but he hoped Wade would see this was for him and every superhuman. As the machinery neared the casket, he told him to endure the pain. The device punched through the enclosure, and Wade screamed out in pure agony. Meanwhile, Luke noticed that even the severed limbs were moving. Wade screamed while Luke watched those severed arms twitch. He realized these fresh regenerative cells were the perfect raw material for the next phase. He confirmed Wade's duplication stayed at 98% with no decay. Compared to the apes he studied, this was the big difference. He spotted an odd chromosome and remembered Nisha's scar. He remembered her genetic data had resisted his normal analysis too. So he used the same trick and finally got it right. He finally succeeded, and the system began crunching the data. But he looked confused as the massive file size pushed the screen to its limits. The data volume was insane, stretching the display. He stared in shock, realizing all of Wade's deepest secrets were hidden right inside. Thinking Nisha's genes were the key, Wade suddenly broke free. Luke saw the massive risk but decided to activate his neural upgrade anyway. As the machine's limbs turned bone white, he explained his brain only made a tiny current. His machine limbs turned white as he explained his brain made a tiny current. It was just enough to link up with every surrounding system. By linking to every powered object around them, the entire lab became an extension of his own mind. In this state, he could predict Wade's every move. He also mentioned he could interfere with Wade's powers. As the monster form cracked, Luke spoke directly to him. His boosted voice explained this wasn't mind reading, they still had to talk. He told Wade not to fear his gift, calling it pure self-protection. Once he embraced his power, he'd find that long-lost wonder again. Luke urged him to calm down and take back control of his body. He told Wade to meet him again in the real world as he faded out, calling it a brand new place where only humans lived. Back in reality, people asked why Luke hid away for so long and were totally shocked he joined the Bureau. On joining the Bureau, he replied they knew about his long life. He just wanted to finally interact with others. Knowing he was a monster that's hard to kill, they decided to end him before leaving. Luke heard this and said his colleague really hated the word monster. Hearing that, he told the group his partner loathed that word. He called out to Wade, telling him to gather strength and swing. An armored hand burst out of the shadows as Wade struck forward. He swung his arm, and an armored hand emerged from the darkness as Wade struck. He asked if that's what he meant. Suddenly, the bald men felt the air leave the room. Meanwhile, Wade was blown away by the sensation. He asked Luke what happened to his body because the feeling was absolutely incredible. He was so hyped and shouted that he wanted more. Luke just replied that he'd only made a few small tweaks. Hearing that, he asked if it meant he was a successful experiment. Suddenly, the bald man recovered and gasped at what a monster he was. Wade heard that and immediately told them never to call him that. They called him a monster, but Wade snapped back, telling them to stop. As he spoke, his right arm shifted and deployed a massive, high-tech weapon. Luke noticed the suit worked perfectly and was controlled by thought alone. But Wade complained that his arm felt way too excited. It was thought-controlled, but Wade said his arm felt too hyper after the strike. Luke noted the suit worked, but Wade still needed to gain control. Luke saw the suit worked but needed focus. Meanwhile, the intruders were pushed back, totally stunned by how strong Wade had become. The masked men banned the word monster and said number 11 wanted Wade's power. They wanted Wade's power, so they planned to capture him to get closer to their divination. Luke heard their weird terms and asked if they could really handle both of them. The guy snapped back, saying they weren't dumb enough to show up unprepared. Unprepared? Hearing that, Luke couldn't help but look a bit surprised. Before he could even move, the ground suddenly swallowed him whole. He knew it was Mulready. He muttered that it had been a while. The earth pulled him under. Recognizing Mulready, he whispered about the long time apart. Wade shouted in worry, so he quickly tried to calm him down. He said it was just an old enemy causing drama. He told him to trust his gut since his body moves faster than his brain. Trust your instincts, he said, because you move before you think. Besides, those two weren't real threats. They were just good warm-up practice for later. If things got messy, he could just shout for some help. They were just training dummies. If he needed backup, he just had to ask. Wade was lost after he left, but he raised his hand and let instinct take over. A loud crack rang out, stopping the men and leaving them in serious pain. He stared at his hands in shock, not even realizing what just happened. Feeling a bit bolder now, he asked what their powers were. Even without understanding his own move, he confidently asked about their abilities. One guy threatened to make him regret it, but his partner stepped in and held him back. One threatened him, but the other stopped him. He explained they were just stepping stones like the ones in those classic hero books. The other agreed, but noted since Wade was a rookie, they might win before he even evolved. Before he evolved, the other man heard this and gave a wicked grin. The masked guy hesitated. Heroes usually have an unstoppable first power-up moment. Not wanting to risk it, they called for backup and hit the deck. Then he told Mulready below to pull back and leave this to the Saints' crew. They struck the ground. He told Mulready they had to retreat and let the Saints' people handle things. Soon after, the earth rose up right in front of Wade. This time, the power lasted much longer. Suddenly the ground surged in front of Wade. He noticed the effect was sticking around. The mud split open, and a dark figure slowly crawled out. A woman with horns stood there. A brand new enemy was facing him. He told himself she wasn't a threat, exactly like Luke had promised. The woman caught that and let out a little laugh. She asked if Luke really went, and described her in that way. She called him the White Ape, shocked to see such a huge prize actually hunting Luke. Wade said he wasn't scared. Luke told him she couldn't even touch him. Touch him. Right then, he felt a black liquid dripping down his suit. She licked a drop, explaining that this sticky gunk was actually her special ability. She said this slime was her power. As it spread, he thought it felt warm and almost nice. But pretty soon, it was everywhere, and it started getting hard to breathe. She leaned in, calling it asphalt oil. She touched him, asking if he knew how limitless superhumans could really be. Just like her. Once just oil leaking deep under the ground. But under the Saint's guidance, she mastered her gift and reshapes oil whenever. Reshaping oil at will, she turns it into loyal pets that follow her orders. Oil rained down while she thanked the chaos for making this meeting fun. While pulling out an item, she added that her oil wasn't just sticky, it's toxic. She flicked her lighter and talked about the most exciting part of using oil. The oil's best effect. She moved the flame closer and set the whole thing off. In a heartbeat, Wade's whole body was covered in flames. She watched the fire spread and yelled that the party was starting. Flames swallowed him whole. She watched them spread, declaring the party had officially begun. She danced around the fire while Wade fought just to move his burning arm. Dancing in the firelight, She watched Wade struggle, but as the surroundings melted in the heat, a dark silhouette began to step out of the blaze. Wade opened his mouth wide and sucked in the fire before him. A figure walked through the fire. Wade opened wide and literally inhaled the flames. Coming to, he wondered if he had actually just swallowed all that fire. Using it, he wondered if he'd swallowed fire. But the woman was hyped to see he's an unbreakable toy. She poured out more oil, screaming as it fueled her obsession to turn him into oil too. He quickly threw up his arm to block her strikes, but a strange feeling bubbled up inside and he felt like he'd puke. His jaw forced open and a massive beam of fire shot from his mouth. The woman jumped back immediately, trying to dodge, but she couldn't hide her shock at the raw, overwhelming power. She tried to dodge but was visibly shaken by the force. Meanwhile, Wade was stunned that fire just came out of his mouth. Panic hit him once he realized it was his actual body, not the mask. Fire shot from his throat. Panic set in when he realized it was his body, not a suit. He yelled to Luke that something was wrong. Luke heard him and reminded him the experiment changed his body, not just the battlesuit. After hearing that, he finally managed to steady himself. It was his body, not the suit. Hearing this, he calmed down. Luke told him to stop shouting and said he was busy right now. The woman suddenly called him a freak, so he told her she was one too. He looked at her and called her Maurice. She snapped back, calling him the Lord of Necromancy, blaming everything on his old experiments. She mentioned Luke's name and said he really lived up to the child's reputation. Then she explained how his altered body and regeneration had completely broken his mind. He just replied that back then he had no body or awareness, so it was fine. She remarked he still didn't value life, yet she was starting to understand him. Luke replied that she still couldn't truly get him. He told her she still didn't understand. Then he asked for her purpose, reminding her that he wasn't planning to go back. She finally revealed that the temple's master plan had run into a major flaw. He wouldn't return. She revealed the temple's plan had failed. He was shocked, saying everything was fine when he left. He added that she proved the experiment worked, unless she was the only survivor. She said she was, but also wasn't as her cell faded. The others had merged with her into the river. They had merged into the river. Their surroundings shifted, showing they had turned into something like a living hell. Hearing this, Luke admitted the results were way beyond what he had expected. It looked like hell. Luke admitted the results blew his mind. He watched as fragments of matter broke apart in the current. Suddenly, she appeared behind him, mentioning his old plan to break organs down into cells. That way, damage from massive power wouldn't cause organ failure. Reducing organs to cells meant power wouldn't kill them. Luke watched her altered form as she said cells ensured total perfection. But the key was missing, so he asked her what that meant. He asked for clarification. She replied it was all about identities. She added that 20 years ago, after he left the temple, the subjects lost their minds. Once he left, they went crazy. Their cells became unstable and they lost all their cohesion. Everything was lost. She only survived because of her fungi powers and DNA blending in the lab. She woke up to find she had become the yellow river below the temple called Mall Red. Luke asked if those cells kept their abilities and if she could use them. She called him cold, but he said he ditched sympathy long ago. He told her to do the same if she wanted a long life. Finally, she warned that the missing subjects and the Saints' plan would end superhumans. Others were already taking the easy way out. She also said Mushroom found a way to break the collars and was gaining followers. Hearing this, Luke knew the collar disaster was definitely that person's doing. Suddenly, she brought up Wade and asked if he could be their secret antidote. Luke pulled out an item, saying Wade wasn't ready and he knew what was important. So he could only give her Wade's cell sample he'd already modified. She took it and asked if he'd ever return to the temple. He replied that madness was needed now. He left the temple to keep the balance of power after all. Status and origins meant nothing to him because he only had one goal. The plan was simple: wipe out humanity and replace them with mutants. The ceiling suddenly shook hard. He knew that fight upstairs was far from over. He warned her that chaos was coming and begged her to pull her soldiers back. She just sat down, wanting to chat more. She even promised that the two guys fighting upstairs wouldn't cause any serious damage to the room. He shook his finger, telling her that nothing was certain when it came to those two. He explained her sidekick was fine, but Wade was a total wild card to deal with. She reminded him that her people were top-tier saints in the temple hierarchy, so they could handle a guy like Wade easily. Before he could even say a word, the ceiling right behind him exploded into pieces. Just as he was about to answer, the ceiling behind him shattered. He turned and saw the oil woman standing there with Wade. He spotted Wade too and immediately yelled out, asking why he looked so weird. Wade ignored him and attacked again. The woman gritted her teeth, wondering how he just kept changing forms like that. Before she could even react, Wade blasted her with fire. Luke turned toward Morith right away. Luke showed her exactly what he meant. She got the message and decided to pull her fighter back. A few minutes earlier upstairs, the woman realized Wade had some serious fire-breathing powers. She bragged about being a high temple disciple, claiming her oil could stop any heat-based attack. She was a proud temple disciple. But Wade was too busy wondering why his flames weren't working properly. That really started to annoy her. He was struggling with his fire, and that really ticked her off. She warned him her power went way beyond just simple oil. She told him she could shape physical matter however she wanted. She bragged about her power to shape matter. Suddenly, a giant skeleton made of pure oil lunged forward to rip him apart right then. The skeleton lunged at him. He tried to hold its jaws open with his hands, but it swallowed him whole. He ripped right through the skull and jumped out. He hit the ground and shouted that the move was weak. He yelled that it wasn't impressive, but she just called him naive and launched another massive strike. She called him naive and told him to prepare for her full power. She really wanted him to feel every single bit of it. Suddenly, she noticed the oil was splitting. She looked totally confused by the sight. She wanted him to feel her full power, but then she saw the oil split. Wade escaped easily using a weird tail that had grown out of nowhere. He was just as confused by the tail. He started yelling, which freaked her out enough to make her scream too. Once they both finally stopped screaming and went quiet, he looked her dead in the eye and told her it was finally his turn. Things got quiet for a second. Then he looked at her and said it was finally his turn. He charged with his tail, but she blocked it right away. The impact shattered her shield and cracked the floor right beneath their feet. The ground cracked and the ceiling fell through. That's exactly when Luke saw the whole thing happen. The ground gave way and the whole ceiling fell down. That was the moment Luke saw everything, including that weird new tail Wade was rocking. He was shocked. He yelled at Wade, telling him to stop right now. Wade was about to finish her off, but he stopped immediately when he heard Luke call out. The woman saw more people coming. She tried to explain herself, but then said they could finally leave. Before they could go, Luke called out to her one last time. He used her old nickname, Mimi. He told her to handle the temple stuff and asked if she'd come after him. Hearing that name, she froze up and started blushing like crazy. Her subordinate asked about the name, but she just told her to drop it and go back home. She walked up to Luke, surprised he remembered a name that nobody had used in such a long time. Luke said he'd forgotten many things, but he'd never forget her name. He said he'd never forget her name. Hearing that, she was totally smitten and couldn't help but feel the love right then. Without saying a word, she turned and headed back toward the river. She was totally lovesick. She walked to the river and told him they would meet again if fate allowed it. Then she finally vanished. Wade watched the whole thing, just staring at Luke with a blank look. Luke turned to him and snapped that everything he saw had to stay secret. As they left, he warned he wouldn't help if Wade talked. So, Wade asked about his looks. Luke said he would explain later. He mainly wanted to make Dean super jealous when they got back. Back at the bureau, Dean's eyes popped. He couldn't believe a rookie already had armor. Luke just teased more was coming. He promised to show Wade exactly how to reverse the transformation process. Dean basically doubled over in pure envy. He was dying inside. He offered to teach the reversal. Dean was sick with jealousy, but Wade stayed focused as Luke explained his special training method. Luke told him to reach for the devices clipped to his waist. Wade did as he was told and asked Luke if he had the right spot. Luke nodded and told him to press down hard. He did it. It stung, but the suit finally started to dissolve off his body. Luke explained the agents would restore his form, plus the side effects would fade with time. The form only lasts 5 minutes. Use it longer, and coming back gets way harder. Dean scoffed. A hero with a time limit sounded like some weird anime fantasy. It felt like a cartoon. He started complaining loudly, demanding his own set of armor. A hero with a timer? Total fantasy. Dean kept whining for his own suit, but Luke ignored him. He told the others to look away. He even warned Nisha, who got the hint. She turned fast and Tara followed, looking confused. Then Nisha peeked. Tara saw her and went bright red. Tara was blushing hard while Nisha stared at the floor. Tara yelled Wade's name, sounding totally annoyed. She snapped at him to get some clothes on right that second. She barked at him to get dressed. The very next day, Dean caught Wade outside and called his name. He told Wade with a straight face to never forget today's lesson. Wade gave a sharp salute and shouted that he'd never forget. He reached for his suit to show off, but Dean cut him off. He yelled his promise and reached for the suit to show off. But Dean said true heroes only transform when they must. Inside, he was still dying of envy. Moving on, he offered up his prize books and urged him on. He told him to study the new moves and not to fail. He shouted that he understood. Suddenly, a voice called for Dean. A woman came charging at him the moment she spotted him. Because of that, he ended up pinned against the wall by her feet. She said they'd talk later, and turned her attention toward Wade instead. She introduced herself as Carly, Dean's best friend and the leader of Class 5. Right after that, Dean told Wade he'd completely forgotten about something. Carly, leader of Class 5, walked off. Then Dean mentioned the forgotten task. Wade was confused and asked what was next. A doctor scanned him and said he didn't look like a monster. But then, they were interrupted by a guy who barked at them to get back to work. Chief Zach said they don't mess with special units. But Wade's case caught the big boss's eye. He called them in and let Ritter take the floor. Ritter introduced himself as a researcher from the science department. He was assigned to watch Wade and start Phase 3 of the adaptation process. Hearing Phase 3, the bald guy asked if they really wanted more monsters around. The man next to him hoped the later stages would wipe out regular people. The bald man lost it, shouting that people like him shouldn't have that power. A fight broke out as the other guy argued that normal humans should have vanished long ago. Zach saw the brawl and told them to take it easy. His eyes went cold when they didn't stop. He clenched his fist, and heavy metal suddenly surged up from the floor. The two were trapped. Ritter asked about the metal. Metal came from the floor and locked them down. Ritter saw it and asked Zach if it was a titanium alloy. He confirmed it, saying the building used that metal to keep everyone in line. He confirmed the titanium alloy. He explained the building uses it to keep everyone controlled. Then he ended the meeting with an apology. Dean wanted to bail fast, but Carly insisted on grabbing a drink. He tried dragging her back, but she just called him heartless. A sudden beep made them freeze. They both checked their collars instantly. They realized their collars were off, but everyone else's started flashing red. The whole building was beeping like crazy as the devices stopped working. Red lights flashed everywhere as power spiraled out of control. It was pure chaos. Some people even had their heads erupting into literal flames right then. People's heads were on fire while others literally dissolved the furniture around them. Even the bald guy and his partner were suffering from their own powers. By then, Nisha's energy was already exploding out of control. As she lost control, Luke wondered if Mushroom caused the failure. He shook it off and told Nisha to get a new collar on. Once she put it on, her body finally started to calm. He grabbed the chance to toss another collar over to Tara. She lunged for it while explosions went off all around. Right as her power was about to explode, she managed to snap it on just in time. Smoke covered her body, bringing her back to normal, but then, everything seemed normal, but she was shocked to find she now had the same battlesuit as Wade. Seeing the armor, she asked if Luke made these for everyone and told him to start handing them out. But Luke explained they were strictly built using Wade's specific cells and special combat data. That meant only their class could use them. He said they had to find the Dean and Chief for a plan. Since only their class had them, they needed to find the leaders to plan a counterattack. Just then, the Chief's voice crackled over the speakers across the city. Hoping the whole city wasn't hit, they heard the Chief's voice. He ordered every surviving defender to meet up at the playground immediately. Heading for the playground, Luke couldn't stop wondering, had the Holy Temple really crossed the line this time? Back in the director's office, the Chief's words echoed over several people collapsed on the floor. Inside the office, the Chief's announcement echoed while people lay broken. Zach turned to the others and asked if they could still hang in there. The bald guy said he barely made it, while the others claimed they'd endure as leaders. They said they could handle it, though one admitted he envied the leaders of the special class right now. They insisted they could lead, but one confessed he was jealous of the special class. Carly snapped that there was nothing to envy. Dean told Zach the rescue was his. He explained this was linked to earlier collar glitches and wanted his team to find the culprit. Zach agreed, telling Lockett and Jenna to secure the station. After telling Lockett and Jenna to stabilize things, Zach stared out the window. He said they'd feared this day for a long time. The glass shattered as he spoke. He claimed collars suppressed both power and ambition. To him, human nobility was just a lie, making the collarless their absolute biggest threat in this world. He kept insisting human nobility was fake, and the collarless were the enemy. Just as he finished his point, the wall in front of him exploded. Then he announced it was time to put the 3rd Division to the ultimate test. The wall crumbled as he declared it was time to test the 3rd Division. Meanwhile, a group of other superhumans were already gathered and waiting outside. Lockett suddenly spoke up about other threats besides just the collarless mutants. He called Jenna the real danger because he was always talking about killing regular people. Zach ignored the comment and just told Jenna to hand over the list. Jenna said he'd already sent the file to his phone. Lockett heard this and was totally confused about what list they meant. Zack realized their hatred was way worse than he thought. He wasn't letting them go. He kept scrolling through names of people tied to wiping out humanity. While he scanned the hit list, the defenders got nervous. They really thought their collars were foolproof. They still helped each other out, with some grieving while others hunted for spare collars. One guy asked the group to neutralize his powers, but Zack's alloy metal manifested right behind them. They were instantly pinned down along with the rest. Soon, even more of them. They were all being rounded up fast. The rest saw it happening and reacted quickly. They knew it was the chief's ability. Right then, Zack went all out to show his true power. Recognizing the chief's signature move, Locket watched Zack unleash his full strength. He started shouting, asking what on earth he was actually doing. Locket kept demanding answers, but Jenna told him to stay out of it because he was busy. Locke was livid, demanding to know which list made the director turn on his friends. Loki was furious, demanding to know what list turned the director against them. Jenna replied that it was exactly as he said, a list of people just like him. He added that the chief saw this day coming and had him pose as a radical leader to gather information. Upon realizing he faked it, he questioned his true feelings and called him a hypocrite. Jenna got angry and asked if he was finally done talking. He accused him of hypocrisy until Jenna snapped. He asked if he was done speaking and if he actually thought he was better than him. Locket sweated while Jenna spoke of years of hardship while he did nothing. He said he almost reported him to the chief, but would let it slide. Suddenly, Zack spoke up, saying he might need a little more time. He told them they were free to keep on talking. Zack told them he needed a bit more time, so they could keep chatting. Locket was shaking after seeing Jenna's rage, but he still tried to speak. He still tried to tell him that he really did not have to yell like that. After seeing Jenna's fury, he tried to tell him that he did not have to yell. A scream from the window caught Wade's attention. Dean saw him stop and ordered him to keep moving. But he yelled back that some bald guy was falling. Dean just said it was none of their business. It was not their problem, and they had to find Luke for a plan. He noted how everything was chaotic, without knowing who started it. Wade tried to name the culprit based on Luke's story, but Luke's voice told him to stay quiet since he would explain it all himself. Dean noticed him hesitating and asked what Luke had actually said to him. Their attention shifted when Luke mentioned he had a theory about who the real culprit might be. Suddenly, Ritter walked up to him and mentioned his big reputation over in the science department. He replied it was just a bit of research. Setting that aside, he started to explain his emergency response. He began explaining his emergency line response, but Dean quickly cut him off before he could finish. He gestured angrily at the two girls standing beside him. Dean interrupted his emergency talk and pointed at the two girls. They were wearing brand new suits now. Luke stepped in to explain the situation. They were wearing brand new suits now. Luke explained he prepared the collars using Wade's cells for a day just like this. But Dean interrupted to get what he wanted. He then furiously demanded to know where his own suit was hiding. Later on, the entire group made their way through the sanitation area. Wade mentioned that something fell off. As the group passed through the sanitation area, Wade noted things fell off. Ritter heard this and asked him what was wrong. He replied that the trash truck lot should not be this quiet at this time of day. He said the trash lot should not be this quiet. Ritter agreed, saying workers would not all strike at once. Something was definitely wrong. Dean noticed Ritter had stopped. He urged him to keep moving so they would stay safe. Right then, someone appeared and recognized Wade. He started asking where he had been and what he was even wearing. But Wade's eyes went to Zane's neck. He saw that his collar had also completely shut down. He quickly blurted out that the collars have failed them all. His collar was dead too. He quickly said the collars failed. He also revealed the others turned red and just exploded. While Ritter confirmed it was not just the office, Wade asked if anyone else made it out alive. They exploded. Ritter confirmed it was not just the office. Wade asked if others lived. Zane sobbed, saying some survived while others did not. Ritter noted that emotions caused it. He added that emotional restoration was actually a key part of his research. So he claimed that active emotions were much deadlier than having uncontrolled powers. Wade then asked Zane where the others were since there was nobody else left around. Zane replied that Anton was still alive and had finally returned. Zane said Anton was back. He revealed Anton came with masked strangers who took the survivors and the bodies, so he stayed hidden. Upon hearing Anton's name, Wade was left in a state of absolute shock. Luke suddenly walked up and asked Zane about the strangers wearing those very odd outfits. He pointed at Tara, asking if they looked like her. Zane confirmed they wore suits like hers and asked if they were from the DSD. He felt relieved, trusting the DSD had saved them. But he was still confused by the tears streaming down his face. Meanwhile, Dean questioned Luke, who asked if he remembered the sacred temple. Dean said he heard of them in the slums and asked if the attacks were linked. Luke said yes and suspected Zane. Luke confirmed they were linked and said he suspected Zane. Dean then asked if the temple was recruiting members, but wondered however. Wade wasn't hearing it. Anton would never go dark. He stepped out, promising to save his friends no matter what. Dean tried to hold him back but failed. He was gone. He had no choice but to let others handle the rescue. Dean warned him they had no coordinates, but Wade said he'd track their scent. Dean decided on some tough love, asking Ritter not to fail him yet. But Ritter wasn't worried. You don't fail a guy with senses that sharp. He saw defiance as a strength, and Dean agreed. Ritter saw Wade's rock bottom as a fresh start. He witnessed real friendship and deep empathy there, proving Wade would finally use his power for the greater good. He saw real compassion in Wade and hoped other mutants would follow his lead before finally unlocking their collars. Meanwhile, Wade was hurtling through the sky. He slammed into the dirt and looked up. Someone was already there. The guy mocked him, saying the defenders weren't totally useless if he made it this far. Wade recognized him from the temple and demanded to know where Anton was. Hearing that Wade knew Anton, the man grew curious. He asked if Wade was really that legendary white ape who learned how to take on a human form. He invited him to join the cause, claiming Anton was already on their side. Wade wasn't buying it. He yelled that Anton would never betray them. He also made it clear he'd never join up either. The man just smirked, saying that was the exact answer he was hoping for. He suddenly stabbed himself, muttering that the temple bosses liked Wade, but he didn't. He started tearing out his own intestines right there in the open. He told Wade he was going to make him share every single bit of his agony. His insides spilled out everywhere. He swore Wade would suffer until his very last breath. It was a sick kind of obsession. The idea of Wade dying slowly actually made him happy. His eyes lit up with excitement, but then he blinked. Wade had vanished into thin air. Wade kicked him hard, telling him he talked way too much. Wade mentioned Luke told him to get rough with anyone spewing total nonsense, but he stopped cold when the guy's guts wrapped right around his neck, choking the life out of him. He was yanked up and swung through the air like a ragdoll. The man called it his signature move while dragging Wade through the sky. He shouted that he didn't care about Wade's ape form or his status. He didn't give a damn if the higher-ups liked him. He just spun him. He slammed Wade into the ground, shattering trees. He yelled that surviving pain is what makes a person strong. He hurled him through more trees, shouting that Wade had just been lucky until now. He kept dragging him along, calling him a total disgrace to all mutants. Before Wade could react, the guy vowed to tear him apart. He launched him into the sky and smashed him back down, screaming that Wade wasn't some chosen hero who could change the world. He shoved his guts back inside after the easy win, cursing that Wade wasn't the chosen one who could actually change the world. He noted that his new sacred body was pretty handy. It could heal his wounds in seconds. He remembered Moritz saying these suits came from some mutant who got wiped out. With the thought of that mutant in his head, he turned back toward Wade. He saw him standing there, asking if pain really made someone stronger. Wade actually managed to smile, telling the guy that if suffering was the key to power, then he was already an expert at it. He told the man to just watch. It was time to transform. After striking a pose, he slammed the activation device on his waist. He told the man to watch closely as the transformation began. He hit the switch, and his new suit began to quickly envelope his entire body. The man tore his stomach open, pulling out stone-laden guts like a biological chainsaw. He lunged forward, screaming that stopping a transformation was basically the easiest thing in the world. Wade's limbs were sliced off instantly since he couldn't harden his armor mid-transformation. The man started dragging him away, planning to turn him in for a reward in tiny pieces. But Wade suddenly appeared right in front of him with some bad news. He announced that the transformation was done as his face mask clicked shut. His severed arms started moving on their own, just like Luke's mods. He called for his hands, and they flew through the air back to him. On the flight back, he mentioned how the guy could literally control his insides. Flying back, he mentioned how the man controlled his organs and grabbed him, calling it gross. He snapped that it was no surprise the man joined the villains. He tightened his grip, mentioning Dean had coached them on using their special powers. Eventually, his arms merged together and fully reattached. After his arms merged and reattached, he grabbed him. He shouted that powers belong in the fight against villains like him, then tossed him away. He hurled him far away, but when he looked down at his hands, he realized they had reattached completely backward. He was totally shocked. Right then, his hand shifted as the armor self-adjusted to fit. He was shocked it fixed itself, and had to respect Luke's craftsmanship. His body felt different now, making him wonder if he could keep changing it. Suddenly, the man's hands appeared, asking if he really thought his power was gross. He crawled up, saying he knew it was weird, but he never had a choice. He called his ability disgusting while crawling up, admitting he knew the truth but had no choice. DSD agents live normally in the city, unlike him. His insides spilled out as he explained they were labeled mutants with broken powers. He explained being dumped as a baby, then left to die in the wild. Even though he dreamed of being a mutant worker, it was still impossible. To show his rank, he started pulling ulcers from his stomach and turning them into carbon. He created what he called intestine diamond dust, but someone stopped him, warning that he was going to die. The stranger explained his body was numb, but he would recover at the temple. He was going to die, but the person said his system was just numb and would heal at the temple. After saying this, he greeted Wade, and Wade recognized it was Anton. Anton reminded him that feelings were useless for the temple's cause, yet they were still equal in rank. He ordered him to let go, so he agreed but told him to free himself first. He turned to Wade and asked him to join the sacred temple. Saying he already knew the reality of DSD, Wade refused to listen, asking if he was evil. Anton admitted he was. He said exposing DSD was worth it, then asked if he knew about the ancient world. Wade asked if that was some comic book thing, which actually surprised Anton. Unsure of what he meant, Anton continued, revealing that humans once possessed divine wisdom despite having such weak and frail bodies. Old records showed the rich flourished while the poor suffered and greed took over. They had money, traditions, and even their own freedom. Everything was shaped by a spiritual imbalance between the soul and the body. They had freedom, all shaped by a spiritual imbalance between body and soul. After explaining this, he asked if Wade understood any of it. Wade just stared back at him, looking completely lost. He asked if Wade got it, but Wade just looked confused. He admitted he didn't really get it either. He didn't get it since workers were banned from learning. As he spoke, he encased the man in iron, making the guy panic. He tightened the metal and said Malwitz was sick, so he'd handle the transport. The man didn't believe him and started screaming to be let go immediately. He ignored the shouting and quickly picked up the body. He tossed him aside and told Mort to take them to Church 17 to show Wade the truth. He mentioned he knew the fungal woman, and Wade said she liked Luke. Anton was confused by the news she was sick since the ground closed, and he knew she was fine. Wade was hitting his limit, while a drone filmed everything from above. A drone caught the whole scene, and on the other end, Luke was watching the feed closely. After reporting Wade was gone, Dean asked if the temple shared their same knowledge. He said he couldn't share much, but confirmed it was true. Dean's face fell as he said he would respect the secret. He couldn't say much, but it was true. Dean looked grim, saying he'd respect the secret, but Wade was different. He feared the temple would twist the truth to hurt their reputation. The others looked at him with a lot of concern. He added that it was all about the truth, especially concerning the mundanes. Meanwhile, Wade ran into that first-class citizen he had attacked a few days ago. What really tripped him out were all the identical copies. Anton dressed him, calling people fools for thinking citizens were better. He said he had something to show him and asked if he remembered that day. Wade started thinking deeply. He remembered attacking as a white ape, though Dean claimed it was just a hallucination. Anton argued the fainting was just a cover since losing one clone meant nothing. He claimed fainting was just a DSD cover since clones are disposable. But Wade's meltdown was real, and the destroyed clone was already being recycled for parts. Right nearby, he spotted the same guy calling him a lowly mutant worker. He started cursing, accusing the guy of slacking off on the job again. Stepping back, he even threatened a kick, then suddenly the man just collapsed. His face slammed into the dirt, but the insults kept flying. Wade wanted to know what was happening, but Anton told him to hush. He told him to shut down the clone despite the guy's confusion. He hit the force-off switch, aiming it straight at the man on the ground. The man's body started to shake, and then he aimed it at the guy. His body began to tremble. Then his face split open and melted into branching structures. Anton said this was regression, where cells returned to nature. He mentioned the circular bit inside was a gnosis core built by DSD. But Wade was still totally lost regarding artificial consciousness. He explained that red beam grants power but wrecks the mind. Without consciousness, the body just turns back into raw matter. Having power isn't about physical changes, it's about holding onto your humanity. Being powered means keeping your humanity. Without it, normal humans just collapse and melt back into nature. But he warned that mutant energy is never truly stable on its own. He warned that mutant energy is unstable, revealing that the collar's cells actually act as stabilizers for the wearer's mind and focus. These collar cells stabilize the mind, so DSD created artificial consciousness and people in the city only exist as cell providers. Hearing this, Wade asked why clones were built to kill mutants. Anton said that was all part of the DSD master plan. Clones kill mutants by design, Anton said. He explained that even one single memory can stop a total mental breakdown. The fastest way to lock in a memory is through intense emotion. That's why they use pain. The temple uses raw suffering instead. But DSD used clones to inflict pain, then wiped it using tech. He finished and asked Wade which side he would choose after hearing the truth. Wade looked down, wondering if his choice even made a difference in this world. He noted that neither side cares for mutants. DSD lies, and the temple is brutal. Anton said their sacrifice was for freedom. Then he heard a sudden footstep. Anton said they died for freedom, but footsteps approached. He told Wade to run and find answers at the temple. As the footsteps grew louder, he pushed him to move now. He said there was no time. Suddenly, a monster appeared right behind him. He was impaled instantly, lifted into the air, and scolded for wasting so much time. Stabbed and hoisted into the air, he was yelled at for wasting time. Yet he insisted he could flip Wade. The stranger snapped that nobody asked him to convince anyone. His only real mission was to lure out the white ape boy. He pointed out that Ivory agreed, especially as the creature kept snarling. His job was luring the white ape boy. Ivory agreed, snarling away. Then he saw Wade's scar and realized he was valuable. Wade just stared back, confused. He asked the guy if he actually knew Anton. Totally lost, he asked if he knew Anton, apologizing for burying him without seeing the scar. He laughed, admitting he made a mistake, but things were changing. He said things would be different now. He cut off his pinky, swearing he wouldn't let him get away. With that, he tossed the severed finger right toward him. He vowed to stop the escape, then threw the finger. Wade just watched, completely stunned and confused. He saw it land nearby before he could even think to move. He watched in a daze as it landed. Then the whole area erupted in a massive explosion. The blast was massive. It ripped way past the main target area. A violent explosion tore through the site. It was so intense that Dean's crew saw it from afar and knew Wade was stuck inside that old factory. While Luke worried Mushroom was losing it, Dean gave the order to get Wade. He wanted Wade back alive. He still believed in what Wade could do. Realizing Dean was onto him, he got annoyed his secret was out. Meanwhile, Dean prepped Ritter for the trip to the refugee center. They waited for orders. Back at the plant, thick smoke choked the air. Even through the fire, a lone figure stood his ground. It was Wade. He was lucky he still had enough potion for one transformation. But as he wondered if he'd survive, he started coughing up blood. He had one last transformation left, but as he struggled to breathe, he noticed the blood. Staring at his wounds, he realized his healing factor had failed. Seeing the damage, he knew his body was done. Then Mushroom approached, admitting he had totally misjudged him before. He called Wade's gift a waste, but now it seemed useful. He healed his own finger instantly. Seeing Wade slip away, he barked in order for him to heal up. Wade was fading fast, but he wasn't ready to let go yet. He saw a vision of a falling figure that said it was waiting. Then it looked at him and called him Dad. Outside, Mushroom stood over Wade, thinking he had died way too easily. He felt a faint breath. Wade was still in the fight. He thought Wade was a goner, but felt a spark of life. Relieved, he told Ivory to grab Wade and Anton and get them back to the temple immediately. Just as Ivory reached out, Wade started sweating like crazy. Something was wrong. He was drenched in sweat. In his mind, he saw an image of himself waiting there to say hello. Brows furrowed, the image claimed it waited to give life. Then it called him Dad again. It said there was something he needed to see. Right then, everything shifted. Wade woke up as his scar burned. There was more to show him. Suddenly, Wade snapped awake as his scar flared. His vision shook, and his entire body felt like it was literally melting. The massive scar across his chest began to glow. Heat surged through him. As the scar lit up the room, Mushroom spotted a strange red light building up right in front of him. He figured it was a surge, but felt uneasy. Mushroom watched the red glow and figured it was just energy, but he got nervous fast. He realized he was looking at raw Higan energy. It was Higan energy. He finally understood Wade had fully awakened the power of his scar. He yelled for Ivory to back off, but Ivory didn't move fast enough. Wade's body exploded with raw power. He told Ivory to let go, but Wade was already transforming. His body warped into something monstrous, and his eyes were filled with nothing but a desire to kill. He became a literal monster with stone-cold eyes. Mushroom saw the change and figured Wade had just gone totally berserk. He thought it was a mindless rage, but the Higan energy was stable. He could feel the sheer power within. He was shocked a rookie could control that much power so perfectly. He admitted Wade was the first owner to awaken. That made him a threat. But honestly, that thought just excited him. He was a threat, but Mushroom loved the challenge. Soon enough, Wade shifted back into his human form and caught his breath. He heard a familiar voice and felt a new power. Back in human form, he felt a strange force and heard voices. Flames surrounded him, but he didn't feel the burn at all. The pain vanished. In its place was a surge of energy. Mushroom asked if having Higan in his system felt good. Wade was confused. Wanting answers, Mushroom asked if he'd join the temple or fight them. He warned that either way, he was going to make Wade pay for Ivory. As he finished his sentence, a fist came flying right at his face. Time to settle things for Ivory. Just then, a fist flew at his face. Wade landed a hit and asked if he was done talking. After landing the punch, he felt strong. Best of all, no pain at all. Mushroom went flying but still loved the hit. He even threw his hand forward to give a thumbs up. Wade was completely freaked out. He remembered how just one finger created a massive fireball before. A full hand should be way worse, but it only made a tiny explosion in front of him. He looked up, thinking that was it. Then he saw it. A tiny black marble appeared and started pulling everything in. He realized he was about to be swallowed whole. He was being sucked in. Meanwhile, Mushroom just sat there and started cursing him out. He asked Wade if he really thought he was the only Higan energy user. As Wade got pulled in, Mushroom pulled the marble back. He wasn't trying to kill him, so Wade just hit the dirt. He kept going, saying he just wanted to teach the guy a lesson. He flexed his power to show the difference between a raindrop and a hurricane. But first, he introduced himself as one of the 10 gods from the temple. Specifically Nephilim, the god of destruction also known as Mushroom. He explained that his power was simply releasing raw energy from his cells. So he dared Wade to show him what he could actually do. Wade charged at him like a bull seeing red once again. He told Wade to bring it. Wade charged like a bull, and Mushroom just exhaled a breath right in his face. As the hit landed, he asked Wade if he knew about epithelial cells. Wade's body exploded. He said it generated enough atomic power to blow a man apart. Wade got blasted back, but he got right up and healed as he charged. He was knocked back but stood up as his body healed mid-charge. Nephilim noticed his rapid recovery was just basic instinct. Nephilim saw the healing was just pure instinct. He asked if Luke ever explained the difference between talent and skill. He kept exhaling to create different blasts, but Wade just kept rushing through all the attacks. After landing another hit, Nephilim shouted that this was what real power looked like. He looked at him and said raw power just made him a wild animal. That was true power. He told Wade his raw strength made him no better than a beast. He figured Wade finally saw the gap between them, so he pinned him down, calling him unworthy. He said no matter how hard Wade tried, he'd never have a real chance. Then he turned to Ivory and asked if he could take Wade to the temple. But Ivory's body started falling apart. He asked about taking Wade to the temple, but Ivory's body began to crumble. He turned back into a human and yelled no. He admitted the counterattack drained him and made him shrink. Back in human form, he yelled no. He was drained and smaller, and it made no sense that such a power gap existed since they had the same scar. Nephilim denied shrinking and shouted that he could actually grow 66 feet tall. 66 feet tall, but his power slipped, and Nephilim told him to stop before he shrunk more. He thought about calling Molrith, even though he hated how rough she could be. Before he shrunk further, he thought of calling Molrith despite her rough style. Then he noticed some nearby rubble starting to shake. His eyes went wide when he heard a voice ask if he needed help. Mechanical arms burst from the ground and wrapped around Wade's body. Nephilim looked up and knew immediately that this was Luke's work. Standing behind a machine, Luke commented that it had been a long time. He also mentioned that he'd been the center of attention lately. It had been a while. He noted he'd been in the spotlight lately. Nephilim tightened his grip, claiming he had much bigger responsibilities than Luke. Luke calmly figured out his plan to fire a palm blast as an energy wave. Plus, he was going to dig up that buried palm ivory just to grab Wade. He sent a blast as an energy wave and planned to dig up that buried palm ivory to grab Wade, warning that since nothing escapes him, any reckless move was totally pointless. Nephilim admitted the guy lived up to the hype like he could actually see the future. He knew the power wasn't his, so he started nervously twisting his fingers behind his back. Luke was just guessing, he insisted. If he couldn't see, there was no point in playing along. Luke's eyes narrowed. He said he'd underestimated him. Then Ivory suddenly appeared right behind them. His eyes sharpened, repeating Luke's line about staying away too long. Nephilim realized the truth and noted he never knew Luke had mind control powers. Right then, a bunch of messengers showed up, even though he'd explicitly ordered no interruptions. But then he saw the crosses in their eyes. Luke confirmed they belonged to him. He pointed out that he kept these brain-dead souls alive, treating them just like children. Nephilim was suddenly surrounded. He started whining that Luke and the others treated them like kids. Soon, Nephilim was surrounded, complaining that Luke and the guys always treated him like some kind of idiot while he noted that Luke was always the smart one. The flames around him pulled back. They pulled back and crystallized. He was ready to see which of them was stronger. The whole place shook from the blast. He wanted to see if brains or brawn won. His explosions kept tearing the whole place apart. Luke fought back by sensing his brain waves, making the messengers and ivory collapse. In the chaos, Nephilim stayed floating in midair. Falling in the chaos, Nephilim stayed hovering. Luke knew it was because of his Higan link, just like Wade's scar. He decided Wade was the perfect subject, but he had to survive this first. Nephilim kept showing off his power, even asking Luke how he felt. Meanwhile, Nephilim kept flexing his power. He asked Luke how it felt to see this energy he called Higan. He called it Higan, then blamed Luke for being stuck while the temple got ruthless once he left. Within a year, they reached Higan, trading countless lives for pure power. They hit Higan in a year, sacrificing lives for power. Luke admitted he feared Higan energy, and the temple's ignorance was what drove him away. But he said he was close to Higan's secrets now, and he wasn't stopping. He was near Higan's secrets and wouldn't stop. He grabbed Wade, thanking him for nearly frying his brain. Now he planned to use Wade's body to experience Higan directly for himself. He used Wade's body to tap into Higan directly. As he sensed their brain activity, Wade started to respond. His eyes snapped open. Luke watched to see what happened when a body touched Higan. But the result shocked him. Even though he could see, all physical matter just vanished. He looked deeper and saw a space overflowing with energy. Physical matter vanished, replaced by a space of pure energy. It was overflowing with power radiation, pointing right to the source. He felt time fade and sensed hostility, but saved the search for later. This showed him Higan's true depth. That was something else entirely. Finally, he closed his eyes. He let Wade's eyes open, saying this kind of power was basically godlike. Totally godlike. He told Wade to remember everything when he woke up, because it was vital for Higan. The Nephilim cut in, asking what he was mumbling. He angrily pointed out that he was still standing right there. He was already annoyed at being ignored, so he launched another massive attack. He was mad about being ignored and attacked again. Luke focused his eyes and saw the Higan flow right behind him. Suddenly, something flickered behind them. They saw another huge surge of Higan energy erupt. The Higan energy blew up, triggering a massive explosion as light filled the entire room. Higan energy erupted again, causing another explosion that blinded the room. Nephilim yelled that Luke's cheap tricks wouldn't stop him. He said Luke's tricks were useless. With Higan sucking everything in, Nephilim claimed Luke's math didn't mean a thing here. Luke's plans were useless. He jeered, saying Luke's mind would just linger before collapsing into Higan. Luke started fading, but he just calmly said he understood. He smiled, told him he hated the outcome, and snapped his fingers. Suddenly, everything started to crack. Nephilim watched in horror as the world shattered. When it finally broke, he wondered if time and space had just torn apart. In time, though, he noticed his arm was healing way too fast. It felt like it had never even been damaged in the first place. He saw how calm everything was and realized none of it actually happened. Nothing was damaged, everything was calm, and none of it was real. He asked Luke if he could actually control time, since that was supposed to be impossible. Luke said that kind of power is fake. He just predicted things through brain waves. But thanks to Wade's link, his power leveled up, letting him predict outcomes perfectly. He can even share what he sees with others. Hearing that, better results mean he can share what he sees with others. Nephilim called it ridiculous, claiming his power was temporary. He insisted the power was fading, then charged up again, boasting his boosted link beat Luke's easily. Then he lunged, firing off a massive imaginary number blast. His link topped Luke's. He lunged forward with that math-based attack, then summoned a mirror while in midair. He kicked off the mirror, using it to launch himself forward like a rocket. He kept doing it, and before long, he had Luke totally surrounded. But Luke saw through the trick. He realized blowing up a cell layer created a Higan's barrier. He knew blowing up a cell layer made a Higan barrier. Using that power, the barrier split, and the tier held everything steady for him. That tier acted as a stabilizer, making real space totally unstable. Once the barrier finally dropped, the entire area just went up in flames. When it fell, it exploded. Plus, that same process meant huge blasts were happening across different dimensions at once. These blasts were everywhere. Luke thought the idea was brilliant, but he doubted Nephilim came up with it alone. Even though the move was clever, it was still full of holes when used against him. He showed that Wade could stay in Higan mentally while his physical body changed. Shifting forms was one thing, but his control over Higan let him mess with reality itself. So he pushed Wade's arm even deeper into the Higan realm. He tracked down Nephilim's projection inside that dimension. He grabbed him immediately and wiped him out of existence. He caught him and crushed him. Meanwhile, Nephilim acted all smug, sarcastically asking Luke if his math was off. But his smirk vanished when he felt something big collapsing right behind him. Those mirrors blew up, and the blast hit Luke's machine hard. The space around them started ripping apart, but Nephilim saw this coming a mile away. Nephilim expected the rift, betting that building new realities would drain Luke's energy dry. He triggered a massive chain of explosions, desperate to be the last one standing. But Luke's machine just soaked up that raw power and held firm. The machine fixed itself like nothing even happened. Nephilim was stuck on the ground, looking totally lost. He lay there confused, especially after realizing his body wasn't healing like it was supposed to. Nephilim lay there dazed on the floor, wondering why his body hadn't actually recovered yet. Luke admitted the strain was real, but since he was crafting simulated realities for everyone involved, what Nephilim saw was just the version Luke chose for him. Nephilim was shaken, hearing he picked his own reality. He still argued that Luke's power only came from Wade. He claimed Luke's power was all Wade, and without Higan energy, he was basically nothing. He screamed that nothing had changed, but he stopped mid-sentence when a new figure showed up nearby. It was the god of thunder, and he told him to stop making a fool of himself. He said Nephilim's fancy tech meant nothing to an old-timer, then demanded one good reason to let him live. Nephilim kept complaining about Luke's tie to Wade, but he was silenced. Thunder said he would spare him, but his title was officially gone. After that, he told Maurik to just take him away. Maurik obeyed quickly, dragging Nephilim and the others. Maurik pulled Nephilim and the rest of the temple members into the ground. Once they vanished, Thunder looked up, seeing only Luke watching the whole scene with a tiny smile. He tried to scare him with a blast of lightning, but it fizzled out. Then he looked up and saw Dean. Dean said it was late and told him to go back to the temple. Thunder knew Dean was the Sea Destroyer and realized he couldn't beat them both. Dean was surprised the name had spread. He joked that he must have really traumatized them. Shifting gears, he asked if Thunder still planned on fighting them to get to Luke. Moving on, he asked if he really wanted to fight. Dean made it clear that Luke and Wade were his people, so he should probably walk away. He cleared the rubble, warning he would show them exactly why they call him the Sea Destroyer. Thunder said it wouldn't happen today, but he promised their time would come soon. After he vanished with a cryptic goodbye, Dean breathed a sigh of relief and grabbed an energy bar. While helping Wade, he asked Luke if that old friend was really such a dangerous enemy. Luke nodded, saying it was a good thing Dean didn't try to fight them. With that out of the way, he started explaining everything that happened. But Dean held up a hand and told him it wasn't necessary. He said everyone has a history, and his was probably worse. Besides, after 20 years of friendship, asking now would just feel insulting. His past might be even darker. Plus, they had 20 years together, so prying felt wrong. Luke was stunned for a second, but then he agreed. He went back to helping Wade, noting that Dean still trusted his own judgment. Dean played dumb about who he really was, which Luke found suspicious. Still, he dropped it and told him to go regroup with the team. Dean kept insisting he had no clue, so Luke just let it slide. Dean was left behind shouting that he was serious and needed a ride since he couldn't fly. Meanwhile, inside the ruins, a man appeared. Since he couldn't fly in the shattered city, a man stepped from Higan into our world. He struggled to stay upright and started to drift away. He scrambled to grab a piece of metal, muttering that the dead lacked real wisdom while he fought to control his own body. Still, he noted that everything was going to plan. His face flickered as he vowed his ultimate goal would soon be a reality. Suddenly, he saw another Higan portal open and whispered that this was the moment. Another figure stepped out, and he declared it was time to go after the first target. He stepped through, stating he'd start with his first target. An hour later, over at the old guard post, Dean was busy on a phone call. After telling Zach to stay safe, Nisha asked about their next move. Dean was finishing a call after warning Zach to be careful. Nisha asked what was next, but when he turned, her new look totally caught him off guard. She explained their old gear was trashed, so they found extras. She offered him a uniform, but Tara doubted it would fit him. When Tara's own button suddenly snapped off, he just handed the spare to her instead. Right then, Luke called them over. Dean asked about reaching the main office, but Luke said the entire network was down. He added they'd lost contact with HQ, and Unit 3's leader had already left. Dean mentioned Zach was guarding the seeds, so Luke started sharing some intel. He revealed most agents had defected, so the temple ordered early hits to limit the damage. But the ones left were unstable, and chasing them could spiral out of control. Dean figured it'd be tough, but their only real option was heading to headquarters. Just as they discussed headquarters, Ritter spoke up, saying he might have a fix. Dean asked if he could contact HQ, but Ritter wasn't so sure. He dug through his coat and pulled out a quantum communicator. He showed them it was a receiver marked with various HQ symbols. While Dean wanted one for himself, Luke was busy questioning those symbols. Ritter admitted this was the first time he'd seen this happen. He identified the final symbol as a warning, "Do not return." Fearing HQ was in deep trouble, Luke asked Dean what the plan was. Dean said orders are orders, but he was going anyway, which shocked Ritter. Ritter tried to stop him because of the warning, but Dean's curiosity won out. Shifting gears, he looked at Wade and asked why he was just sitting there. Wade just stared at his hands as Luke explained he was focused on a task. For his task, Wade focused his left eye, and Higan energy started glowing as he reached out for it. Focusing his left eye, Wade watched as Higan energy glowed around him. Soon, half his body was sucked into the cross, and he vanished into thin air. Ritter and Dean stood there completely stunned by what they saw, but their shock was about to get worse. Their shock deepened when he suddenly popped up right behind them. They were stunned when he reappeared. The area flickered with Higan energy as Wade began phasing in and out rapidly. Luke asked what he was thinking, and he admitted he hated the memories coming back. Despite the memories, his mind felt clear, and he was handling his power perfectly. He showed off by hitting himself and instantly reappearing somewhere else. He could even keep his body parts into different places at once. He even shifted into a huge, muscular form. Dean asked if Luke taught him that, but Luke said no. Luke said he hadn't taught him. Nisha clenched her fist as she watched Wade transform so easily. She instinctively touched her scar as Dean took charge of the group. She touched her scar while Dean told everyone to get some sleep, ignoring Ritter and the rest. Tara heard this and hurried to find some food and gear at the post. Tara hurried to grab supplies at the guard post. Later that night, while Wade was snoring on the ground, someone reached out and told him to wake up. He opened his eyes, totally confused to see Nisha standing there. She said she had questions about his powers and that scar. When she asked about the scar, he started to lift his shirt, but she told him that wasn't the point. Regarding the scar, he lifted his shirt, but she brushed it off. She explained that she initially thought their identical marks were just a weird coincidence. Ever since that explosion earlier today, her scar started feeling really strange. She asked him if he knew why. He admitted he had no idea. She asked where he got his, but he didn't know that either. When she pressed for details on what it did, he still had no answer. She went quiet, so he asked if she had more questions. Since she didn't answer, he asked if she was finished. She said yes and turned away, but suddenly, he claimed he saw something. He explained that he used to doubt his eyes, but now things were clear. He pointed out a strange glow right above her head. Hearing this, she asked if she could see it too, but her reaction made him wonder if he had it as well. She called it a shimmer, but he saw a beam on her. He explained her light seemed tied to Higan. To prove it, he reached into that dimension, trying to explore her side. He opened a path into her cross and told her to stay perfectly still. He carefully opened a path into her cross and told her to stay still. He even leaned in to get a better look, but he saw nothing, which didn't surprise him. He finally pulled back and closed it right before leaving. Right after he closed it and left, a woman appeared in that space. She glanced toward his old spot while she stayed hidden. Back in reality, Wade said it was empty and asked how far her scar went. He showed his ran from head to toe, though his heart felt different. Since he could blast flames out, she admitted she felt it too. For her, the feeling was definitely the strongest in her eyes. Even though she was used to the heat, her eyes still felt really uncomfortable. He told her to show him the rest of the scar. She agreed, took off her jacket, and said it stopped at her stomach. But it was still growing. While they checked it out, someone nearby noticed what they were doing. It was Tara, and she was totally horrified by what she was seeing. Someone nearby spotted them. It was Tara, and she was shocked by their behavior. Nisha said her scar reached her thigh and started loosening her belt. Nisha mentioned her scar reached her thigh and started loosening her belt. Tara quickly ordered them to stop, but another voice barked the same command. All three turned toward the sound and went silent as they spotted Dean and Luke. A second later, both sides started yelling, accusing each other of spying. They caught Dean and Luke, and the finger-pointing started immediately. The next morning, Dean mentioned the supplies would be helpful since things were getting messy. He looked at Wade and Nisha, admitting he was shocked. He only brought Wade for luck, but they seemed totally linked. Luke said Wade's powers were plenty, but Dean wondered if the temple knew about that scar. Luke wasn't sure. He never heard anyone at the temple bring them up before. Since no one mentioned them, Dean thought Wade's old memories and Nisha's situation might finally explain things. But Luke noted Wade's captor had a scar too, so the temple might know. Ritter heard this and remembered something important. He told them scientists found a new dimension by tracking gravitational waves. They tracked those waves to a new world. Luke asked if he meant Higan. He said some researchers used that name, but Luke got suspicious because the researchers used the same terms as the temple. Ritter revealed the test subjects all had powers and red scars. His bosses ordered him to check Wade, and now he finally had proof. Higher-ups wanted Wade checked for the scar, and Ritter just confirmed it. He looked at Wade and insisted they go to headquarters. But Dean stepped in front of Wade and said, "Not now." He refused to let them take Wade, insisting they stay focused on the job. So he asked Ritter if he understood. He asked Ritter if he understood, and Ritter quickly agreed. Dean asked if everyone was ready to roll, but someone pointed out that headquarters was way too far to go on foot. Dean said they'd fly, but Luke warned his jet wasn't big enough. He explained he wouldn't use the jet since he often snuck out here anyway. Since the jet was too small, he mentioned a nearby shapeshifter camp. He planned to ask them if they could use their secret railroad. The capital had kicked the shapeshifters out, but his constant trading meant they owed him a huge favor. They would let them use the railroad. Luke pointed out the missing inventory, making Ritter nervous about his smuggling. But Luke and Dean shut him up, so he just played it off as a friendly deal. Luke mentioned that callers might be failing because their old devices were constantly going offline. But Dean said he replaced them last month, scolding him for abusing his position. Suddenly, a howl and some rustling came from the bushes. After the rustling, a white wolf stepped out of the woods. Dean frowned, sensing trouble, and got ready to fight. But a figure rushed in, yelling for him to stop, and knocked the wolf down. After pinning the animal, a young woman stepped out. Her voice shook as she begged them not to hurt her father. When Dean saw her, he asked if she was Emmy. He suddenly remembered the small wolf from before. But Emmy angrily snapped that she never looked like that back in the day. Suddenly, her father called out to Dean. He thanked him and asked him to protect Emmy. Seeing this, he asked Dean to take care of Emmy. Seeing her father like that, Emmy begged Dean for help. Her dad, Dean, told her to chill out and asked Luke to check him over. Luke saw the white ape transformation starting. He knew the guy wouldn't survive it, and wondered how an exile lost control like this. He pulled out a syringe to suppress the powers and put him in stasis, but they had to move fast. After the injection, he warned them it would only last 7 days. The wolf let out a painful howl as the serum kicked in. Luke added that if they didn't find a fix in time, every shifter would eventually turn into a monster. He looked at Emmy and asked if she wanted the same treatment. While Tara fixed her outfit, Dean said it wasn't necessary since she was born a natural superhuman. Luke was shocked, noting how rare that was. Radiation usually causes infertility, so a natural-born superhuman is worth investigating. It's rare enough to study. Wade overheard and asked about her anatomy, but Nisha said she had no clue. She didn't know. Meanwhile, Dean asked Emmy if anyone else in her town ended up like her father. She said she wasn't sure. Strangers came promising a cure, and most people agreed to it. But everyone turned on each other instantly, and the strangers fled with the survivors. They tried to kidnap her too, since she's a natural superhuman. Her dad fought them off to save her, but then he started spiraling. They found him. Luke figured the temple was behind the mess, and Dean wanted to check the local villagers. Found him. Luke suspected the temple was involved, so Dean wanted to inspect the village. He added that if they were too far gone, they'd have to put them down. He just hoped that Emmy understood that she might have to kill them. Emmy replied she would rather die human and respected his choice, since he had given them all such very good lives. Staying human and honoring his choice for their good lives. Suddenly, she caught a scent while Wade heard movement. They both shouted that something was coming. As the rustling got louder, Emmy called out for her Uncle Barrett. Moments later, a bear walked out from the thick bushes. Emerging from the brush, it stepped forward and grunted Emmy's name. But half of its massive body was already a monster. The beastly figure stood before them and let out a roar. Emmy's hair stood up. She whispered that she had a really bad feeling about this. Dean agreed and told Luke to scan it. Luke said he needed a fresh tissue sample. A new sample. As he studied the beast, something about its hands looked really familiar to him. It didn't take long for him to remember those hands. He shouted that it was a hybrid from back when Wade joined up. Where he saw the hands, he shouted it was a hybrid from back when Wade joined. Wade told them to run, warning that the thing would eat anyone in its path. Hearing that news left Emmy in a state of total shock. Totally shocked, they both started dodging like crazy as the monster launched its first attack. They were stunned. Both scrambled to dodge the creature's strikes. Its eyes turned blood red as a gross arm shot right out of its mouth. Wade stopped midair. Emmy was also pinned down by some kind of invisible force. Invisible grip. Luke launched his drones to check it out. Using his special tech, he tracked the telekinetic energy coming from the creature's throat. He figured it was a two-body fusion with brand new powers. Dean saw the threat and moved in. Powers. Dean saw the danger and decided to handle it. He pulled off his mask and told Nisha to stay back. Stay back. Luke warned him his prosthetics were glitching and the enemy was just too powerful. He just grabbed his weapons and told Luke he could deal with the mess later. Meanwhile, Wade tried to break free. He opened a portal and punched the monster right in its tough face. But Emmy screamed, worried he would smash Barrett's face into a million pieces. He'd crushed Barrett's face. Wade yelled back that he could still feel the guy was alive in there. Looking closer, they saw other animals squirming inside the creature. Emmy felt sick seeing her friends trapped in there. Dean warned her they weren't the same anymore. He then let out a massive blast of nuclear energy. It completely vaporized the monster's physical body. The body. He noted that the outer shell was just meat. It would grow back unless they did some real damage. He grabbed his gear and told Luke to find a heart. Luke scanned the creature and saw something weird. He spotted a core labeled Project Nephilim. Dean asked if he'd found the weak spot, but before Luke could answer, asked if he found the weakness. Before answering, Dean realized he'd totally underestimated the thing, and his own body was finally hitting its limit. He'd underestimated it. His physical body was failing. Luke finally said he'd found something like an artificial human core, but the name carved on it was one he absolutely hated. Dean knew, but reminded him there was no going back. They had to finish this. He said they would take the risk and funneled thermal radiation into his hand. He powered up and unleashed one final, massive blast of energy. Heat surged into his palm as he fused his power into a massive blast. The attack shredded everything in its path, roaring straight for the target. But the beast unhinged its jaw and swallowed the blast whole. Right after, its body ballooned up and detonated from the sheer pressure of the impact. Watching it vanish, Dean whispered that he actually thought the thing might survive. But that last hit cost him both arms. He told Wade to go check if the monster was finally dead. With Wade and Emmy finally free, Wade scrambled to his feet to follow the command. He edged toward the remains, hardening his arm for safety. Once he was sure it was gone, he reached for the core. But Luke screamed at him to stop. He warned that it was still alive, picturing Wade getting impaled in a vision. Wade looked back, totally confused, but in that split second, everything went wrong. The monster rebuilt itself right around the core and drove a spike through his chest. It stabbed right through him, but then the creature froze, locking its eyes onto his face. It growled that he felt familiar, realizing he could shift between being a human and an ape. Deep inside that core, a severed head started shouting about Wade being a Nephilim. Meanwhile, Luke ran over to Dean, only to find his body completely broken. He leaned in closer to check. His body was a wreck, but then Luke spotted a familiar Nephilim core, and the truth finally clicked. Nephilim were legendary hybrids, packing human souls inside bodies with angelic strength. They were exactly what the government wanted their superhumans to become. Right then, he heard the monster call Wade a natural-born Nephilim. This meant the temple was actually forging Nephilim in secret. He started questioning who Wade really was since the creature clearly recognized him. Suddenly, the Nephilim shouted that Wade was complete and had to die. He called it a waste since the saints were fighting over him. He knew about the sacred altar chaos, but warned he was no pushover. He bragged about devouring a whole village of weaklings just moments ago. Emmy froze, her eyes shaking with pure rage at the news. Blinded by fury, she charged forward, swearing to end him. But the Nephilim just grew a massive limb of flesh from his side, swatting her midair and sending her flying across the battlefield. The impact knocked her out before she even touched the ground. He dismissed her as a total nuisance, but before he could do anything else, his hand was suddenly impaled as Wade kept countering with Higan. He kept up the Higan counter and pushed away while the Nephilim's arms literally exploded. He fought back with Higan and retreated while the monster's arms shattered. Its wounds healed instantly, and the Nephilim finally understood why everyone wanted the power of Higan. He called that power and the cross the true Nephilim essence. His face twisted with envy as he told Wade he must feel like a god. But he vowed it would be his soon, letting his full strength explode. He claimed the power for himself and let loose. Luke confirmed the creature had insane abilities, but he was still confused about where they actually came from. Tara suddenly showed up and was absolutely horrified by the state of Dean. He tells her the recycler is still running, but the energy is fading fast. Seeing Dean like that, he explained the recycler was active but losing power. Tara and Nisha were terrified, wondering what to do next. He said he could reroute some energy, but not enough to keep the suit powered. Tara collapsed to her knees, crying out and asking why Dean had to be a hero. Nisha listened while Tara sobbed that this wasn't heroic at all, she was just scared of losing him. Tara kept crying about how he wasn't a hero and she couldn't lose him. But Luke snapped at her to stop. Now wasn't the time for tears. He picked Dean up, determined to find him much stronger prosthetics. After promising to take Ritter and Emmy, he warned them specifically not to bring Wade back to headquarters. He promised to handle Ritter and Emmy while warning them to keep Wade away from the base. He looked at Nisha, and she stood up straight instantly. He told her to stay close to Wade and keep an eye on her scar. Then he hopped onto his drone. He urged them to get Wade out of there while he took on the Nephilim. Most importantly, he told them to survive. As the drone took off, the ground under their feet started to crack open. Luke's massive machine rose from below. The ground started cracking. Luke's machine rose from below, making the Nephilim look back and curse at the rope. The robot stomped down hard, crushing the Nephilim right under its massive foot. The girl saw her chance and ran to Wade, checking on his chest wound. He told them he was okay and offered to carry them to move faster. Both girls were totally shocked, but he didn't wait. He just scooped them right up. Then he started sprinting away while holding both of them at the same time. Luke blasted into the air, but he soon coughed up blood and realized he'd pushed himself too far. He stared at his hand, reminding himself to be careful for the sake of Wade. He pushed too far. Staring at his hand, he told himself to be careful for Wade. On the ground, the robot's stance broke as the Nephilim yelled that villains never die. He broke free, wondering if Wade's group knew that. Then, he pierced his own chest and ripped out his core. He leaned back, shouting that absolutely nothing like this was going to stop him. He ripped out his core, leaned back, and declared nothing could stop him. Then he tossed the core into the air. Meanwhile, Wade kept running with the others. Tara begged him to slow down. She thought they'd escaped, and the insane speed was starting to make her sick. But Wade stayed focused on what was ahead of them. The speed made her sick, but Wade stayed focused. He sensed danger and threw them aside as an attack rushed in. They looked up and saw the Nephilim again, now in a brand new form. He quickly grabbed Wade in his giant hand and grinned, asking where he thought he was going. He tightened his grip, trying to crush Wade's body until it finally burst. He squeezed Wade's body. Seeing this, Nisha and Tara screamed his name in a panic. Suddenly, a massive surge of energy erupted. It hit the Nephilim and tore right through its body. When the light cleared, Wade stood there in his suit. Nisha went silent at the sight, while Tara looked visibly relieved. She called out to him, but he didn't answer. Little did they know, the Nephilim's core had attached to his back. From his back, a voice whispered that Wade's suit was even better than he had imagined. Meanwhile, in the city, someone was telling Wade to wake up. In the city, someone urged Wade to wake up. Once his eyes opened, an old man spoke up. The old man asked if he was okay. The driver, though, started complaining immediately. He asked if he was okay. The driver yelled that he shouldn't have run a red light. The old man scolded the driver for lying, but he swore it was the truth. Bystanders were confused because Wade had been thrown so high, yet he looked completely unscathed. Suddenly, Wade's face changed. The driver offered to take him to the hospital, but Wade insisted he was totally fine. His expression shifted. The driver offered a hospital trip, but Wade said he was fine. He looked around, wondering where on earth he was. People nearby thought he had a head injury, but the driver just wanted to leave since Wade said he was fine. As the driver left, Wade figured they were just regular, friendly humans. Suddenly, a sharp pain hit his head. Weird memories of a girl, a door, and Colby appeared. He wondered what those visions meant as he continued roaming around the city. Memories of Colby and a door surfaced. He wondered what they meant. The place felt like an elite district, but with no superhumans. When he caught his reflection in a glass wall, he froze. He stared at his face, wondering which version was real. At the same time, inside a monitoring room, a report came in regarding a very unusual reading. Inside the lab, they got a strange reading. The professor asked for details and found where it was coming from. It was Lab 03's negative SP. The assistant guessed what that could actually mean. It came from Lab 03, The assistant guessed the meaning, while the professor cursed that a subject in the extended world had gained consciousness. He ordered every lab to disconnect and called for an emergency core meeting. Then, he told Klein to sign out immediately. He ordered a total disconnect and called a meeting. He told Klein to sign out right now, but there was no answer. Inside a pod, Klein finally reacted. The professor's voice echoed from the Nephilim core, telling him it was time to exit. The professor's voice rang out from the Nephilim core, ordering Klein to leave. He hated leaving Jean behind, but with the professor's urgent pressure, he finally gave in. Suddenly, his whole body just went totally limp. Inside the monitoring room, the professor admitted things weren't going as planned. After his body went slack, the professor confessed this was a total shock. Meanwhile, over at a restaurant, a server was asking Wade what he wanted to drink. He just asked if he could pick something from the menu. Since he could pick anything, the server told him he could order whatever he wanted. The server confirmed he could pick whatever he liked, but the word order actually confused him. The restaurant staff was definitely caught off guard by that one. After he finally paid, they whispered about how he clearly had no clue how phones worked. Wade just stared at the bubble tea, knowing Colby was obsessed with it. He took a sip, tasting the sweet milk and chewy pearls. His eyes went wide. It was delicious. Honestly, having it for the first time almost moved him to tears. But then it hit him, he was literally trapped inside Colby's body. It was so good it brought tears to his eyes. But then he remembered he was in Colby's body. He wondered if this was Luke's memory and questioned everything around him. He scanned the room, wondering if this was the Superhuman Defense Headquarters. It didn't look like any hero base, though. No one had powers. It felt more like one of Dean's old comic books. He had all of Colby's memories now. Even the painful ones felt kind of beautiful. They were actually pretty sweet, but he knew he couldn't just sit there reminiscing. He remembered the Nephilim crushing his skull and stealing his body. That head injury had sent him straight to Higan to suffer. He snapped out of the trance, but things felt weird. He couldn't feel his own body at all. He just felt like he was sinking, or maybe rising. Then he saw something confusing, yet it felt strangely familiar. Sinking or rising, he saw something he couldn't quite name, but instinctively knew. It was the very essence of Higan, the literal end of all universes. His soul drifted away, pulled toward the brightest light at the edge of everything. After that, he became Colby. Just remembering it felt surreal. At the end of it all, he stepped into Colby's life. Now that he was in control, he wondered if it would last forever. Suddenly he remembered the truck crash. It should have broken his bones, yet he felt fine. Feeling totally normal, he looked at his hand and wondered if his powers still worked here. He reached out to touch the glass wall. It started cracking immediately, then the whole thing just shattered. While the server panicked and asked if he was okay, Wade felt relieved. His powers were back. While he tested his strength, the server and the other guy just stared at him nervously. He ignored them, focusing on building enough energy to enter Higan and find himself. He decided to go for it, wondering if he'd inherited Colby's high IQ too. He decided to try, wondering if he was now as smart as Colby. As he started to focus, a jagged scar suddenly appeared on his face. The mark spread down his neck. The server screamed that it definitely wasn't a cut from the glass. Not a cut, he was actually starting to glow. The intensity made everyone scramble back away from him. Right then, a mysterious eye marked with the cross snapped open, sensing his massive energy signature. That cross-marked eye woke up once it felt his power. Suddenly, everyone nearby seemed totally possessed and under its control. Controlled by that eye's command, the crowd began to close in on him. They reached for him, demanding to know who he was and how he got those powers. He bolted away as fast as possible, then literally tore a hole into Higan. He could finally feel his real body inside. But when he tried to grab it, he couldn't actually leave Colby's body. He could feel his true body inside the rift, but he was still trapped. Suddenly, the portal began to violently pull his soul out through Colby's open mouth. As the portal sucked his soul out of Colby's mouth, he felt that familiar, weird sensation of leaving his physical shell behind. Colby's body went totally limp. The possessed crowd dragged him along until he finally slumped to the ground. The crowd looked down and realized Wade was gone. Their eyes snapped back to normal, and everyone looked around in total shock, having no idea what just happened. Once they snapped out of it, everyone was confused and shaken. At that exact moment, Colby woke up with a splitting headache. Meanwhile, back in the other realm, Wade realized he'd found the path back to his real body. While traveling, he wished he could bring everyone else along to this place, if it was actually real. Because where he ended up was honestly just extraordinary. Meanwhile, at the meeting, the professor asked for ideas to solve this total mess. But someone questioned if handling it was even the right word for it. The woman asked if the diver took something during the escape, and if he got how serious this was, and escaped. If he grasped the implications, the other snapped back that he definitely did, since he was the one who actually made the rules. The smoker claimed he was never trustworthy and worried the radiation would just lure those things in. The professor just asked if they were done yet. Then he scolded them, saying they were just lecturing him instead of helping. But as he restated the meeting's purpose, his whole body began to quiver. His vibe totally shifted as he told them he would give them every single detail. He told research centers to get ready because things were about to get very busy, very fast. He pointed out they had a subject with free access to Higan, which shocked everyone. He took off his glasses and reminded them that this was bound to happen eventually. So he asked which specific lab the subject had managed to escape from. Glasses and reminded them it was bound to happen. So, he asked which lab the subject escaped from. The assistant said Lab 03 at Eureka. Hearing that, he wondered if that was the truth about the missing subject and agreed. He linked the fragment to his clone, which made the others ask about going public. He promised them his clone would lose its memories, keeping only its basic natural instincts. Endured this. Hearing that, the others urged eliminating him quickly to remove every single risk. Endured hearing this, the others pushed to eliminate him fast and remove all risk. They didn't want their world turning into a lab nightmare. They agreed because they didn't want their reality turning into a lab disaster. She added they'd invested way too much to let their reality fail now. As the Cordova logistics consultant, Tori refused to let this whole situation spiral out of control. But some defended Lab 03 since its data showed real promise. Things spiral out of control, but some debated Lab 03 since its data showed promise. He argued it was just way too cautious to stop progress over one single mistake. Suddenly, Klein shared he'd met someone with extraordinary genes while out diving. He mentioned the person's strength and their weird ability to use Higan's energy to heal up. After detailing how the person entered and exited Higan, his face turned to pure fear as he realized the whole situation. His face went pale as he noticed them. He noticed everyone staring at him and rebuked them for luring Wade into the mix. His expression was filled with genuine fear. Meanwhile, the professor raised a finger and asked him more about this mystery person he claimed to have met. He then projected an image of Wade and asked if this was the guy. Klein looked and confirmed it was. He added that people in 03 lacked strength but could still process energy. He also noted some of them just collapsed and turned into the white ape. But Wade was different. He was strong and had a ton of energy-linked mutations. Tori saw him as a threat, but the other guy insisted Wade was the perfect fit. Tori saw him as a threat, but the other man insisted Wade was new and fit their search. Tim argued Wade was manageable as a prototype. Someone else pointed out Wade was more evolved than all the rest. So he suggested observing how quickly Wade could clear out Lab 03. More evolved than the rest, so he suggested watching how quickly Wade could clear 03. Just like in Lab 05. This could help get funding. But the others called that crazy and said test subjects didn't deserve to be treated that way. The priest said it would be his responsibility if Higan went wild. Another man blamed him for only seeking profits while things got worse. Later, he turned to the two people nearby and asked them to speak. But the man and woman just stayed silent. The others quickly understood exactly what was happening behind them. After all, they could hear faint noises coming from the two. Everyone fell silent after this. It wasn't long after. From the two, everyone fell silent. Soon after, the professor pressed for a verdict as the subject's superpower radiation started spreading. As the subject's power radiation spread, they all started thinking and whipped out their phones. After a minute, they decided to keep 03 for now. The professor's eyes lit up as he simply said okay. They agreed to keep 03, and the professor acted thrilled. But his secret order was to flood the lab with divers and wipe out every risk the subject posed. This totally threw Tim off. He reminded him that he'd asked them to decide. Suddenly, the power of that cross-marked eye flooded into all of their minds. It hit their minds. The professor staggered as the force surged right through him. Once he caught his breath, he cursed, yelling that it was happening again. He screamed he was turning. Klein asked if he was okay, but got no answer. He yanked out a syringe and stabbed himself to stop the change. The other core members followed. Four members did the same, injecting themselves fast. One grabbed an anti-superhuman shot and jammed it right into his body. Afterward, he wondered if the monster wanted chaos or was just acting on impulse. On impulse, the group started texting the trust in their leaders. They claimed they only wanted the subject's value. To them, the monster was the enemy. After checking the messages, the Higan priest realized they were incomplete. Since the monster was their enemy, the priest found the messages lacking. Then Eagle said the beast feared 03, making it the perfect way to end it. Eagle mentioned the monster's fear of 03, calling it the perfect weapon. The professor also spotted the note on their disclosure. He saw the note on their disclosure, asking if the infected person was handled. The assistant said it was done. He noted the disclosure and asked if the infected was dealt with. Earlier, armed bald guys thanked the witnesses for their sacrifice and then cold-bloodedly shot them. The group cleared out immediately after doing this and left the bodies behind on the ground, including Colby. But then his eyes started moving as he sucked in a breath. The red in his pupils began to spread. Meanwhile, he took a breath as the red spread through his pupils. Meanwhile, a core member raised his glass to celebrate rescuing humanity yet again. He even claimed they were closer than ever to erasing that creepy presence. In response, the others raised their glasses in the air too. Everyone raised their glasses, declaring it was all for the future glory of the human race. They toasted to the Alliance's progress. Just then, the couple heard it was handled, but the man snapped at the messenger. He told him to leave, making it clear no one enters the isolation room without approval. This made the woman worry if the monster was watching from inside. She looked around, clearly unconvinced. But the professor told her to trust him since he'd done this countless times. She still wasn't convinced, but the professor said to trust him since he'd done this before. He promised the lab report meant they could kill the monster whenever they wanted. While he bragged about their strength, the monster was already watching them. The unseen observer felt excitement and gratitude toward Professor Hutch. The unseen watcher felt purely excited and grateful to Professor Hutch. It noted it was finally reconnected to Lab 03 and the vessels gathered there. So it declared that it was finally time for the next phase. However, when you actually try to press the button, it hesitates. It thought about Wade and decided that other business needed to be handled first. Just then, Tara saw Wade from behind. She asked if he was okay, saying he really scared them since the ball had stopped but he was still out cold. Since he'd been unconscious, she asked how he felt and if he remembered what happened. He'd been out, so she asked how he felt and what he remembered. As soon as she spoke, something stirred inside his mind. He saw flashes of being chased and returning to Higan. He also remembered smashing through the glass wall and getting surrounded out of nowhere. Remembering everything, he shouted that it was all real and he'd crossed dimensions. The girls, however, were just left totally confused by his words. Meanwhile, over at Lab 06, a massive monster was running amok. A man stepped forward and pulled a sword from behind his back. With his sword ready, he leapt toward the creature and drew his blade. With one single strike, he severed the monster's head. And just like that, the head flew into the air. He sliced the head clean off, sending it flying. As he hit the ground with a solid thud, he sheathed his blade. Out of nowhere, another monster burst from underground. It called him Tomo and cheered for killing his 10th malignant cell this month. The creature stabbed the dead monster, saying the host would stabilize while it fed. It hungrily absorbed the corpse, making him ask about their next stop. As it finished devouring the remains, the creature popped up right next to him and suggested they should finally take a well-deserved break. It saw his impatience, but reminded him many cells still remained. As the creature started its transformation, it pointed out that he was using his powers way too often. After shifting into a woman, she joked that he might transform himself, but that couldn't happen, since he was their only shot at a future. Then she looked at herself and realized she had definitely grown way too big. He was their only hope, yet she saw her massive size and knew she overdid it. Still, she told him to rest for days. Suddenly, a bright flash of light cut through the sky. A giant spark erupted above as flames started raining down on the pair. Light filled the air as fire surged toward them, forcing both of them to shield their eyes from the intense heat. When the blast hit the dirt, a woman appeared and scattered the fire. After the flames cleared, she smirked and told Tomo he was pretty talented for taking out another target like that. But she clearly didn't buy the chosen one hype. Hearing this, the giant woman addressed her as Lizzie. She begged her to go easy on him, but Lizzie clearly hated that casual little nickname. Tomo quickly noted he never asked for that name. The woman then suggested they chill for a few days since they were exhausted. She even proposed a hot spring trip. But Tomo's eyes suddenly darted to the side. He looked up and saw lightning bolts crackling all across the dark sky. Nephilim cores emerged from the cross, announcing they had finally joined the awareness spheres. But as they materialized, they were stunned to be inside Lab 06. Tomo, however, was already reaching for the hilt of his sword. He charged as the Nephilim flagged him as an extremely high-threat target. While the alarm blared, he sliced right through one of their cores. He was marked dangerous while he ripped through a core. That's when he felt that this thing was made of pure Higan energy. Suddenly, his left eye was forced to tear open a brand new portal. A portal opened, and his friend saw it, shouting his name in total panic. The other Nephilim realized Tomo was overkill and escaped toward Lab 03, fearing his mind might get wiped. Fearing destruction, Lizzie lunged forward and let her flame swallow him whole. Because of that, the deep diver started screaming inside his pod. The scientist suddenly lost both signals and started freaking out. As he screamed and signals died, the lead tech called for a medic and ordered an immediate disconnection. The screen showed the power was cut, but the connection stayed live. Right then, Tomo somehow managed to rip open the cross. Power was dead, but the link held as Tomo opened the cross, wondering if this was really Higan. He questioned if this was Higan. Meanwhile, in Lab 03, Wade told Tara he was okay, but she demanded an exam. She found no internal bleeding, and he bragged about how fast he heals. He was healing, but she noted he hadn't eaten in days and should be unconscious. He didn't know when the hunger stopped. Tara figured he was losing it, but he swore he visited another dimension. She asked if he opened that Higan rift behind them, but he said it wasn't him. He denied opening the rift, but then the cross tore open and Tomo crawled out, still wondering where he was. He clutched his burning eyes since they weren't healing, and Hela was nowhere to be found. He spotted Wade's crew and wondered if they lived here, but Wade looked strangely familiar to him. Suddenly, the vision in his left eye came back. Wade charged forward, announcing himself as the enemy, while Wade lunged forward screaming like a maniac. Tomo drew his sword and asked if he had a death wish. They both lunged, but right before their blades could meet, right as they were about to clash, members of the Nephilim cores suddenly warped in and stood directly between them. Wade crushed one with his hands while Tomo slashed the other. After the kill, they both asked if the other was linked to that thing. Tomo went first, introducing himself and calling himself a flawed hunter. Wade shared his past as a trash collector now working in superhuman defense. Silence fell as Tomo looked confused by that title, while Wade and the girls were just as baffled by the term flawed hunter. They didn't get it, but Tomo was positive this place wasn't Higan. Wade and the girls just stared, trying to process the strange terminology. He held out his hand and asked what the hell was actually happening. Wade mentioned visiting Higan, describing it as a soulless, creepy void. Tomo was shocked, asking what that place was really like. He was stunned and kept pressing for details about Higan, even asking if Wade could take him there himself. Both guys glanced down and realized something was seriously wrong with their hands. A blinding light suddenly erupted from them. Tara looked on, terrified, just as Nisha started screaming behind her. Tara asked what was wrong, but Nisha just clutched her eye and whispered the word Higan. Suddenly, Wade and Tomo shouted it too, right as the ground started to shake violently beneath their feet. Through the tremors, they saw rows of scarred faces all chanting the name Higan. At that exact moment, Professor Hutch repeated the word as well. He grabbed his head in agony as his hair began turning white. Staring in total disbelief, he muttered that this was literally impossible. He noticed a scar forming over his eye and yelled that he wasn't some lab rat. He insisted he was the one in charge and belonged to the original universe. Desperate to prove he wasn't an experiment, he reached for his eye and tore it out. Looking into the mirror, he found it almost impossible to breathe. The eye had grown back. He was officially turning into a monster. Meanwhile, Tomo and Wade were shouting at each other to just let go. They fought the force pulling them together. Tomo got sliced, but the wound closed instantly. Suddenly, he could feel Hela again as a voice from the cross asked where he was. Hearing the call, he frantically asked if that was Lizzie and Hela on the other side. Hela sounded relieved, admitting she had been worried sick after his signal cut out. She tried to reach through the cross but got a nasty electric shock. Tomo yelled at her to back off and promised to return soon. He drew his blade, ready to strike, but first asked Wade if he had seen the same vision. Wade nodded. Wade added that things were even clearer when he was using that other body. Tomo knew he had to go back to find the truth. He told Wade to figure out how to reopen the portal, so they could solve this mystery together next time. After saying goodbye, he vanished. Tara immediately turned on Wade and demanded to know what was going on. She started grilling him about the other dimension and that weird glowing light. Wade tried to piece together an answer, but before he could talk, Nisha jumped in and said she saw it too. She explained that the vision was probably linked to the scar, since everyone in it had one. Wade suggested they team up to find answers because he couldn't do it alone. Nisha agreed, and he started asking more questions. Tara stood there awkwardly, totally lost while they talked. After a bit of quiet, she stood there feeling completely ignored, finally speaking up to ask what her actual role in this mission was going to be. As she kept asking about her part, Nisha reached out and told Wade to step a bit closer. She felt her powers growing as the scar spread and wanted to hold hands again to see if it triggered another vision. Ignoring Tara, Wade said he wasn't sure, but Nisha insisted they had to keep it together. He pointed out she couldn't heal, but she just shrugged and said Tara would do it. Tara was getting seriously annoyed being treated like a tool. They ignored her and grabbed hands, but she told them to stop. She yelled at them to include her and quickly snatched both of their hands. For a long minute, the three of them held on nervously, waiting for some kind of massive reaction. But absolutely nothing happened. They all glanced at each other, feeling totally awkward until Tara finally stepped away. Tara stepped out, asking if they both had seen those infinite versions of Wade. But she admitted the whole thing sounded way too crazy to believe. Multiverses are fine in Dean's comic books, she explained. But those are just old stories. None of that stuff has ever been scientifically proven. Wade shot back that in another dimension, he was trapped in a different body. He said the guy's thoughts were flooding his brain, but he couldn't understand them. Plus, he noticed the people there don't even believe in superpowers. It was all total gibberish to him. He mentioned they don't buy into powers like they're living in some ancient world. To him, it felt like they were just a twisted reflection of their own reality. So he figured if he tapped into his potential, he might actually bring them here. That idea made Tara stop cold. She grabbed his hands, saying she knew his heart. But powers cause trouble here too. She reminded him that power always brings a world of pain. Then she asked about his comment that a world without powers was actually beautiful. She guessed it was because they were just normal, which really started to worry him. He apologized, realizing that bringing them here might turn their peaceful world into this mess. She looked him in the eyes and said he hadn't done anything wrong, though. She just reached out and playfully ruffled his hair. She just told him to stop overthinking and said they should go find Dean and Luke. After ruffling his hair, she just said they needed to find Dean and Luke. Hearing that gave Wade a quiet, warm feeling inside. She added that this was definitely a situation only Luke would know how to handle. So she turned around and told everyone they needed to get moving. Suddenly, Nisha tapped his shoulder. She said it was obvious, but Tara was the smartest person after Luke, and they had to protect her. Just then, Tara looked back and asked why they were all just standing around. Tara glanced back, wondering why they were lagging. She kept walking, saying they just needed to find Luke and hear what he had to say. Meanwhile, Luke was just chilling on a bench. He turned his head and asked Dean if he was finally finished in there. Dean walked out of the room in his new body, but he looked totally miserable. He immediately started venting his frustration about the whole thing. He looked pretty upset, immediately complaining while Luke stayed cool. Luke even noted he had adapted well and asked if he liked his brand new look. Luke mentioned he'd adjusted and asked about the body. That just ticked Dean off. He screamed that he looked like some kind of monster. His arms started crystallizing. He complained because he wanted sleek, cool armor like Wade has. But he stopped when he saw something on his side. His eyes went wide as his other arm froze in a deep red color. He begged Luke to look, saying he looked totally mangled. Luke told him to chill out or he'd lose control of the body. Dean's jaw stretched out in a creepy way as he repeated the words about staying calm. His eyes shifted wildly as he yelled, asking how he was supposed to keep it together right now. As soon as he talked, his body snapped back. Luke praised him, saying years of Nephilim experiments made his body adapt to the system. Hearing Nephilim, he asked if his form came from their test. His body kept healing, making him wonder if it was temple tech. But Luke told him that wasn't quite it. He looked at him. Luke looked right at him and dropped a massive bombshell. It actually came from a completely different dimension. Still, he kind of laughed at the thought, finding it super hard to believe. He said it was tough to wrap his head around, but he had to sync with the steel sphere. But the second he said that, Dean went charging right at him. He tried to explain that he finally regained an important memory. But Dean was way too focused on all the wild possibilities of that parallel universe. He got all hyped up about the multiverse and asked if they could actually travel there. He asked if that world was dying, but Luke said ours was instead. He added that in comic logic, that place was the real world. He also said that other world had no powers and was totally stable. So Dean asked if that meant they were all just characters in a fictional story. Luke said you could look at it that way, and Dean just started walking away. But he froze when Luke said it wasn't exactly true. With most of his memory gone, he explained their world was just a branch of another. But that branch only existed because he had interfered with it. It was a branch caused by his interference. Mentioning the lab made Dean realize that everything had been carefully manipulated. He said that explained a lot since he'd always felt gaps. After realizing the lab controlled everything, he admitted he'd felt those gaps for a while. Fixing his shirt, He added that HQ's weird orders were why he stopped following them. He ignored those confusing orders. Now that they knew masterminds were pulling the strings, he wanted to know exactly who they were dealing with. Luke's findings were just guesses based on fuzzy memories. He wasn't sure yet, so the villains and their true goals remained a mystery. But he confessed he was likely the one running the field and its growth. Dean looked shocked for a second but quickly got it together. He casually fixed his clothes and said he understood, but Luke thought he was way too calm. Surprised by his own chill, he wondered if it was his weird body or just info overload. He was surprisingly calm, blaming it on his strange body or the massive info dump. But honestly, instead of being scared, he felt a rush of pure excitement. That said, he admitted that Luke's kid-like body really made him curious. That young Luke was curious. Luke explained this child's body actually belonged to this specific world. So, Dean asked why the kid never seemed to age. He asked why he didn't age, and Luke said the boy once had an enhanced body like Wade. He could endlessly reprogram his cells to stay young. But then the temple captured him, and he transformed from a machine back into a child. Dean listened as Luke explained that memory wipes kept him stable. Being a kid again helped him escape. Now he planned to survive and fix everything. Dean stayed silent for a long moment, thinking deeply before he finally decided it was time to speak up. He admitted they were basically lab rats and asked what the next move was. Luke shot back by asking if he knew what usually happened to test subjects. He brushed his hair back and said they'd be tossed once they're useless. While fixing his hair, he said their only choice was to ruin the experiment. So he declared he was done hiding his eyes, which Dean definitely noted. Luke supposedly ran the lab, so Dean asked how it kept going without him. He answered that a project this huge would obviously have a backup team ready. He said a backup team must be running things. He even pointed at his drone, suggesting the big boss was the head of the DSD or the temple leader. Suddenly, Dean admitted that his own memories were pretty broken. Since his memory was shot, he read books to handle the stress and find out what had changed. He revealed those fantasy comics were just a cover since the government controlled everything. Owning ancient books was a crime. Anyone caught usually just vanish. It was a crime, and people vanished. Luke figured the books held secrets that the authorities were hiding. That meant they were behind everything. But then, something popped up on his drone, and he warned they were in danger. His drone showed danger. He saw Ritter heading back to HQ, but the sabotage tracks meant they were totally stuck there. Suddenly, Dean spotted a fluffy shape and wondered if he was finally losing it. But Luke said Amy was just handling some business and would be back. With no ride, they sat on a bench and talked about Dean's body. Dean said it felt weird. He wasn't even sure if he needed to eat or sleep. Luke warned that his body might not work like a normal human's. He told him not to overdo it and explained how to recharge. Dean realized he'd likely have to eat things with super genes. Luke kept it simple to survive. Dean basically had to consume other superhumans. He felt sick instantly. Right then, Emmy dashed past right behind them. They looked around, but they saw absolutely nothing. He felt nauseous, but then Emmy zipped by. They looked, but saw nothing. A moment later, she sprinted past again the second they looked away. They checked again. Dean was certain something had just rushed past them. Just as he decided it was furry, Emmy screamed there was a monster. He rushed past and realized it was furry. Emmy screamed about a monster. Then they froze in shock as the creature lunged forward to eat them. Luke was swallowed whole in a split second. They watched in horror as it lunged, gulping Luke down instantly. Dean transformed right away to save him, but Luke stopped him. He signaled for a stop and calmly said he was fine. Hearing that, Dean just stared at him in total confusion. Meanwhile, Luke spoke to the person inside, calling her Mimi. Mimi knelt before him and told him the temple was in serious trouble. He soon learned that the Nephilim had gone rogue. She said dozens crossed from that realm, and their strength is beyond 10 gods. So, the 10 god left with his confidence while the Nephilim likely ate the rest. She said he had warned against being kind, but she refused to just stand by. She insisted they must stop them, but he said he simply couldn't. He admitted he lacked the power and knowledge, but was certain Higan's energy could stop the Nephilim. He confessed he lacked strength and knowledge, but believed Higan's energy could work against the Nephilim. His first move was the temple, but time was against them. Still, his talk about breaking the system left her totally confused. Suddenly, Dean suggested they grab one of them to find the truth. Dean proposed seizing one of them to find the truth. He claimed he could handle them now, but Luke insisted they find the other Luke first. Dean wondered how, and then suggested Mulwray, which she agreed with. They agreed on Mulrith, but she asked if the wolf would join them. Luke confirmed. After they agreed on Mallory, she asked if the wolf would join in. Luke said yes, and hearing that, Emmy went silent and started to panic. But Mulready had already burrowed down, ready to begin at their split site. As they prepared at the site, the ground in a nearby ruin began to rumble while Wade ran around. Because of the chaos, Tara begged him to slow down, but Nisha told him to go faster. Tara started crying, saying they were just wandering around aimlessly. She cried that every single direction looked exactly the same. Only 30 minutes ago, Tara had finally relaxed after all the weirdness. He warned that daylight was still dangerous, but she snapped and cut him off. Right then, Nisha saw the sky go dark while the others watched in confusion. They spotted a black hole swirling above and wondered what it could be. While they stared at that black hole in total confusion, they were suddenly sucked right inside. This caused Tara to curse Wade out for jinxing them like that. Later on, she finally woke up and looked around. She scanned the area and started asking where they were. Wade admitted he hated this place, which reminded her of Mercury being in retrograde. Just then, he noticed Nisha's hair was actually turning black. As Nisha's hair turned black, she told them it felt like all of her special powers had been completely stripped away. Suddenly, a loud shout rang out and they quickly spun to the side.